Unity Alpha, which Blizzard Fiasco are you talking about? There are quite a few.
For some reason, it is impossible to leave them to admit it.
Hello,
we're live.
Everyone. That's us. I've finished Endwalker. He has not. Please don't spoil anything for anyone who might be playing. But
Yep. Nightbot is on a rampage today. So Matt has, I think, put every single FF14 Endwalker related spoiler into the Nightbot list.
Yeah, we've got place names, we've got character names, we've got nouns, we've got concepts, we've got themes, we've got everything you could imagine. Don't test it, because I believe Dakor's probably on hand to ban people, and I'll be going metal here, so.
Damn.
Anyway, yep, it has been.
Yeah, we got to preserve that sanctity.
Yeah, it has been.
So this mad fucker did it in 3 days?
Yeah, so I had some queue issues on Saturday and a little bit on Sunday. I didn't get playing till like Sunday evening, but I basically put in about 16 hours a day until I finish it. Because you just don't stop. Unless life tells you, that forces you to stop, you just don't. It is so immaculately paced that any time you finish a break, you're like, okay, well, I've got like another hour to play. I might as well start the next segment, and then that's you for 8 hours, because that's how it goes. It's great.
And I mean, that endurance, you must have been drinking your milk like a good, healthy, grown boy.
That's it, yep.
Uh-oh.
Just had to sneak down to the special fridge. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, God.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about the I don't know what to call it. It's like the milk gobbler. Yep. Basically, at some point, there's been a milk thief at Blizzard, so that's quite something to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm halfway.
55%? Probably around halfway.
Around halfway. I'm around halfway.
It's, well, okay. I think you're probably close to halfway. That's hard to say. It's like I'm trying to balance runtime versus the things that happen. And you're probably around 45 to 50%, somewhere around there in both.
It seems like there was a lot of absolute just fucking big cum moments on the way.
Yeah, it is very, very, very long, and it is just It's weird because it's like a very predictable formula in terms of ebbs and flows, generally speaking, but it's just really solid the whole way through. Really good.
No, I'm excited. It's what my weekend's going to be. I've continually been screwed over by Q. Just it is what it is. When you have work hours, and you game on the same laptop that you use for work, what happens is you can't do what Matt does, which is remote in to his home PC, get in the queue, and then work's done. Go home, you're ready. I haven't been able to do that, so yes, I've been a little bit messed up, but yeah, no. So far, stuff's. I mean, you already know there's a video out on our MMO channel. Yeah, about that. So yum.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say. I definitely wouldn't recommend binging it unless you are physically incapable of stopping yourself. I fall into that category, but also I was like, I need to finish this before I get back to work on Monday, because if I have to start thinking about work, I'll not be able to enjoy it quite as much. And also I need to get back on Twitter, so I had absolutely nuked the shit out of it. But I wouldn't recommend it. There's a lot at every major point. I'd basically almost say when you're done a zone, I'll mute that. When you're done a zone, you probably should just stop and go for a walk for an hour and then come back, honestly. But have a big sleep after every 2 zones or something. But
I'll go for a walk for 29.5 minutes. Hopefully you time it fast enough not to be booted.
Oh, yeah, of course. There's definitely no way to get around the 30-minute kickout. Absolutely not. No way. None whatsoever.
You definitely can't idle in a cinematic for 2 days straight.
You actually can't do that.
Oh, did they fix that?
Yeah, you can't idle cinematics. Yeah, what you can do is redacted.
There we go. He's not spilling.
Everyone knows.
Yeah, no, man, that's good shit. WoW's had an interesting week.
Yeah, I mean, that's the actual part. I was going to say, the only one time this week I remoted home to log in ahead of time. Every other time I just went home, hit Q, and then opened... forgive me for saying this, I opened World of Warcraft to go into the Mage Tower. Yeah. And that actually was an experience. Fun one, but a very frustrating one at the same time. But we'll get to that later.
Fun-strating?
Yep.
Yeah, well, man loves to be straighted. So, we've got plenty to talk about. And then for Blizzard themselves, it's not only after the milk. The milk came out yesterday, and then, of course, as we all know, busting feels good, especially for Mr. Brian Bellino. Billitow? Union busting. Yeah, of course. Yeah. What did you think I was talking about? Oh, yeah, and the community council.
That as well, yeah.
Uh-oh. It's very public. In an interesting way. And actually, somebody's already getting roasted on Twitter, a member of the community council, which is pretty predictable, and just about everybody told Blizzard it would happen. So there's that. And then there's also the cinematic. Cinematic that is very, very interesting. I thought it was interesting. Certainly a lot to talk about. I think, for the video breakdowns that I've seen, I think it's only us and Tally who have done video, because I know people have done the stream reactions and stuff. And I think mine's 28. I think his was 38 minutes. And yeah, there's quite a lot to talk about. I haven't watched his video. For me, I think a lot of the runtime in our video was about the philosophical issues, because it's the sort of thing. I mean, what the canon is we can agree or disagree. It's the canon is the canon. That's for Blizzard to decide. But I think it's a lot more interesting is, does their canon work that well from a narrative perspective? There's a lot of very interesting moral depth we can go into here. A really good story is I can't say that word. Person who got the brain tumor, who started to get, let's just say, urges. Maybe at one point they were towards his wife, then they changed to be towards a younger individual. That word, can't probably say it, but that word. But yeah, this individual, a lot of dreadful, acts and behaviors happened. And after a whole big thing, it was actually found that this individual had brain tumor, and they had no history of that preference, dysfunction, bad behavior, etc. before the period when this tumor appeared. Yeah. And when the tumor was removed, that horrible behavior ceased. And then the tumor came back, and as it did, the horrible behavior actually started again. And I think it's just a very, very interesting, moral case, which I think deeply applies to the Sylvanas situation, because you're working out, the culpability, the guilt of somebody who is working under, in this case for Sylvanas, it's very external circumstances. But, it's like, yeah, she did all the things that she did, but obviously she wasn't in her right mind as her complete self.
Yeah.
So how do we process the whole guilt thing here? And hey, that thing about the brain tumor making someone a thingy file, not a comfortable read, that paper, not comfortable whatsoever. But it is a very interesting moral quandary that this person seemingly was holding down a regular enough family life, then a brain tumor comes, and now very aberrant, not good sexual preferences develop in this individual. When the tumor appears, the tumor gets removed, and the individual, that behavior or that desire goes away, and then it returns when the tumor returns, because like the part of the brain it's pressing against. And I just thought that was like a whoa. It's like really disconcerting that like something happens with your brain, mate, and your personality, your preferences, your impulse control. Because I think there's some like frontal sort of area tumors that can they can change people's some of their preferences, their impulse control. It can basically create a sort of induced sociopathy.
Yeah, I mean, there's even I'm trying to think of a specific case, but there's even the case where I can't remember what caused it, but when people wake up with like vastly different accents, and there's no reason they would be able to speak in that accent or have that accent, it's like who you are is depending on. It is not this immutable quality of your. I guess in real life we would say, it's not your soul, it's your brain. Mm-hmm. That's what we would generally say. That's what controls things, because a lobotomy can that awful practice you used to do would just basically mentally neuter people. It's like, oh, you're a problem. Oh well, we'll just wreck your brain. Oh, you're not a problem anymore, but you're still alive.
Yeah,
I guess the soul is the brain in this sense or in this capacity. So it's like,
yeah. So
it is. I agree. It's a very interesting thing you could talk about. Very interesting.
It is
for a story to cover.
For that individual, what happened is it was discovered that this thing seemingly was caused by the tumor, and the individual was actually allowed to return home, which was of course to a home with with children in it. Yeah. Now of course the tumor came back, and the bad things continue to happen. But it's an interesting moral quandary, right? It's like, how do you think about someone's actions whenever something else is impacting them? Because their actions are their actions. You can't change that being did that thing.
Yeah.
And how does that apply to the justice system, etc. But it absolutely is like another factor that you have to include in your moral arithmetic.
Yeah, I mean,
and with Sylvanas, then that's where it comes in, because as you, citation, you can look it up. Sorry, I don't mean that in the like look it up, bro, because I know some people do that. I literally don't have it to hand, but it is a story. I actually was reading through a little bit more of it last night. So as you go through this with Sylvanas, it's the whole thing where, her soul gets shattered. Zoval keeps a bit of it in a little cube, little crystal. And then, Sylvanas, as it turns out, for almost all of the time that we've known her, what's basically happened is she's not been her full self.
Yeah.
And, there's philosophical takes on what that actually means that very much pertain to what you think about, consciousness.
Yeah, there's no getting around it. It is a very, very interesting topic. I guess the question comes down to, is it been handled correctly or is it being handled well? I mean, that's one of the things we all thought about that in Warcraft 3 when it was Arthas picking up the cursed Frostmourne. That wasn't, it was a sort of, I guess I'm not too familiar with how many stories of a paladin turned is literally philosophy changing and outlook changing, or if it's a curse taking hold. But a lot of the point was people going on, Arthas isn't really that culpable for his stuff after, because it was the Frostborn. It was the curse of the Runeblade, as it were.
Yeah.
So I guess it's about like how it's actually handled and dealt with properly and appropriately. Because I think one of the problems is kind of, oh my god, I was going to say this in reference to something else later on, but I'm going to say it now. There is a surprising truth in, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
Oh,
and,
love it.
and he says, I know writers who use subtext and they're all cards. There is certainly something to be said when your subtext is so subtextual that no one knows it exists or not.
With this cinematic?
I'm talking more in a principle angle.
I thought
overall.
actually that this was a very, very clear cinematic.
Yeah, I'm talking in the principle. I'm talking
gotcha.
in principle where it's like, because how much of that was in their head when they were doing the Arthur story of like, okay, this story is actually about culpability under different circumstances, versus we all knew that was a thing we talked about, but was it too below the surface to actually exist? Did it really exist? So it's the idea of you kind of have to be a little bit obvious sometimes, not to say all subtext is a mistake, but there's a case where you people will project onto stories, whereas the intent's not always there.
You have to write for your audience, knowing where your audience are at. With this, I'd say it's less of a thing about subtext. I think it's more of a thing about elements of the storytelling being at odds.
Yeah,
because they have a visual representation. I know that sort of a shorthand you can do for this is good Sylvanas, evil Sylvanas. And it's very easy to think that this is good Sylvanas and evil Sylvanas that she was split into when you look at the visual storytelling of this cinematic. Because, if you look at, here is the frame of Sylvanas, who does not want to do the bad thing, who says in 1,000 lifetimes she'd never do the bad thing. Yeah. By the way, look at her. She's got her nice hair. She's got her, big blue eyes. Yeah. She's here designed to be quite appealing. And, then you look at, where are you, Banshee?
Yeah, she's...
And, you look at Banshee Sylvanas and...
red eyes exploding, like...
she has red glowing eyes.
She's having a big cry.
She has Banshee's wail sort of, or, the Banshee eye thingy going on. She's red and evil looking. So the visual storytelling here is one of...
red versus blue.
Red is literally red versus blue. Yeah. So in terms of how we understand the language of color cinematically, it is quite literally red versus blue, and beyond just Halo. Okay, guys, when I say appealing there, I don't mean like that. I mean a character design that is designed for appeal versus a character. It's what the emotion and player connection a character's design is supposed to appeal. Yeah, or is supposed to create in a player. So. Number one, the good evil thing really does visually... look at it, right? Come on, we don't need to dive too much into that. So you could totally understand using that as a shorthand and therefore thinking that because the only time we've seen this scene, which obviously this is not a flashback, this is Sylvanas' memories being relived in her head as the clashing of her soul is resolving who she actually is, such that she wakes up a fully reconstituted being. But they have displayed Sylvanas as we knew her with good, honorable connotations and with the language of cinema and the language of color, all being in this is the good guy. And then they've portrayed her as a separate person, because you see the two of them talking to each other, with this Sylvanas. And it's a little bit less because take a character like Gollum, or, there's Gollum and Smeagol, and you look at the cinematography of that. They're talking to each other, but it's often, talking into a reflection. And it's kind of, the camera is quite different to this, where they are literally showing there are two Sylvanases talking to each other. You never think that Gollum and Smeagol are like the one dude sliced in two. Yeah. You would always see them as different elements of the personality of this being. And it was shot as such so that anytime where you'd see Gollum and Smeagol in the same frame, it's I believe the shot is, it's either Gollum or Smeagol's reflection is in the water, and you can see the side of the actual being's face in the camera shot. Yeah, camera's looking down.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, right? So with that, the language of cinema is very clearly saying same individual, same overall conscious, same overall personhood. This is us portraying the strife through the language of cinema. Whereas this, I don't want to do major spoilers for the show. It's a show you've watched the first season of about hacking with Rami Malek.
Yeah.
I suppose it's kind of the the thing. But, you know, let's just say a show that's trying to explore, or like Fight Club. I mean, you can't really spoil Fight Club and people, can you? You know, where it's like two beings are being displayed. So it's a very different thing of this is sides of the same personality versus a completely fractured personality. So with this, they've used the language of cinema. The visual language is showing two persons. It's only towards the end that they start to be talked about in a very integrated fashion. So for the majority of the cinematic and how people will actually sort of experience it, it very much does look like the Ranger General has been, you know, kind of inserted back in. And the Ranger General's looking like, what the fuck have you done with my body? What? Yeah. That is totally how the language of cinema makes this look. And it's not that.
Yeah.
It's not that. What this actually is like the same person, the same consciousness, you know, moving and swirling and just having this nightmare. So imagine your soul, like, isn't fractured. But imagine something happens to you and then you're cured of it and then you fall into a coma and, you know, you're like reliving all the stuff in your head, talking to yourself. But like at no point are you like different people. And I know this could seem like splitting hairs, but I think it's super important for the understanding of why people have read this cinematic as the jailer took away good bit of Sylvanas, then Sylvanas acts very evil for like 17 years, then the jailer puts the good bit of Sylvanas back, and now Sylvanas is at horror over what Sylvanas has done. That's how a lot of people are immediately reading this.
I will say that's very similar to how the Uther one's treated, in a way. But his not like he's getting his soul back. It's more the way he kind of just comes to term with who he was and what he did as Uther in his last moments out of his anger. So if you try to draw parallels between the last time they pulled this soul split mechanic, I could see why people would think very heavily they're going for the angle of, oh no, Sylvanas is good now. It's fine. She didn't have the good part of her in her. I can see why people would do that based on what Uther's kind of story was ultimately like. But
see, the thing, the canon with Uther is the same as the canon with Sylvanas.
Yeah.
It's just that this is getting so technical, isn't it, everyone? It's just that it's more extreme. So, you know, for me, the whole moral quandary of this is like the way that this initially is portrayed is that this individual that we're looking at here is trapped inside her own head, looking at the things that other Sylvanas has done. Yeah. And then the story that it's telling is her slowly realizing that she actually is that Sylvanas. So I think the important thing to understand for what Blizzard I think really means here, this lady was not stuck in a crystal.
No.
What happened is the crystal, which contains that bit of her soul, goes back into Sylvanas. And the way that Sylvanas' consciousness processes what's actually happened to her is, you know, the way that she's coped with this is that she has manifested this being of herself within her own head. And this being of herself within her own head that springs into existence whenever her soul is reconstituted, basically as a way of working through the trauma, then experiences the trauma of seeing what the other half of her has done. But it's not like this Sylvanas was locked away in a crystal. It's just a big bit of her being was gouged out. But it's not like that bit of her being was just sitting there in the soul crystal being like, guess I'm in a crystal then.
Yeah, I mean, it's
this, so I know this is really complicated, and this is why. Blizzard, the way you should have filmed this. And I don't want to like try to backseat this or armchair this. Yeah, exactly. It is that the souls weren't divided into good and bad, but the thing is that the language of cinema here would make people think that, because it doesn't make it quite clear that this good, air quotes, good, that this good Sylvanas, it makes it seem like this is a version of Sylvanas, when this is not. This is like a fragment of Sylvanas spontaneously created by her consciousness as her soul is reconstituted as a means of her internally processing and living through her trauma and trying to come to terms with what she did. And what happens is, the soul comes in and then she's in this coma. These bits are clashing and thrashing. Uther comes in and is like, hello there, are you in emotional turmoil? I'm going to guide you through this. And then he guides these two bits of her soul going, and then they come together, and then she wakes up. That's what the cinematic actually is.
Yeah, but
But it doesn't feel like that to many people who have watched it.
And I can sort of explain a little bit why, because it is exceedingly hard for people to comprehend. Not to say people as in others, I mean including me, what the fuck the soul crystal actually was. Because if it's a part of her personality, then the same moral quandary still exists as, the culpability problem. And I think that's the thing people are finding issue with, as opposed to, obviously you saying that's the language of cinema, obviously makes sense. That's the way people are led to think about it, even though it's not literally true.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, but the problem
is at odds with the visuals.
Yeah, so people have so people have this idea of, well, the only way you can logically frame, especially after cinematic, logically frame what the soul crystal was, would have been the part of it that was taken out of Frostmourne. Ever since her personality has been, vindictive, vengeful, logically speaking, in terms of reasoning, a lot of those things are completely fair, given she was killed by someone who wrecked her home place. Fair enough to be vengeful. But it implies that she's not capable of acting the way she will when she wakes up before.
Yeah. And
unless they address that in a very clean and fair way that helps people logically understand, they have no other recourse than to jump to their own conclusions, which is the conclusion they're told about, which is, oh, Sylvanas is bad and she's not culpable because she was bad. Even though she does say she accepts it was her. It's like, yeah, you accept it was you, but there's still the physical element of that part of you wasn't there.
And that's why I was bringing up the brain tumor thing.
Yeah.
Because let's just say what actually happened is Sylvanas was normal, then she gets a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And that causes the sort of induced sociopathy, which is actually that's a thing that they've found in the big science. Yeah. So that's the thing that clinicians have found, right? So what happens if Sylvanas gets a brain tumor? She gets induced sociopathy. She does a whole bunch of terrible things, and then she is cured. We're all going to agree that there is some degree of culpability for those actions.
Yeah.
But we're also going to realize that those actions were perpetrated by her, not in her normal state of mind.
Yeah.
And then if you think, okay, replace that brain tumor with weird, spooky magic from Big Nipple Man.
Yeah, domination, soul split stuff, yeah.
Then how do we actually process this? And it's the sort of thing you can, when you actually get into the legal side, there's all of, the defenses by insanity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's other bits of precedent as well. I think there's also a discussion here about how do we view justice, because, from what my understanding of the research is, large punishments are not really an effective deterrent, nor are they good at preventing the recommittal of a crime.
Yeah, except for the death penalty.
But that actually, well, I suppose that's pretty...
In this world, that's what we're looking at.
And then the thing is, and I bring this up because you're probably thinking, okay, really? You're going to talk about Scandinavian versus American? That actually does appear in the WoW canon because of Uther. Yeah. Because Uther's entire thing was that when bits of his personality were gone, or bits of his soul, he misconstrued justice for vengeance. And quite a lot of, you could say, some of what drives some elements of our justice systems in various different countries is that need for catharsis and vengeance. And do we get the vengeance confused with justice? And that is something, thematically, that Blizzard have tried to go on with Uther.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying any of this to be bending over backwards to cover Blizzard's ass.
Yeah, no,
to make it extremely clear, I think that this is all very interesting thematic territory. I do not think that Blizzard have told this story well. I think this is lore that fundamentally could work, but it's really struggling to work as has been told in-game. And while aspects of this are very cool cinematic, I think, they should have thought to themselves, what would have happened if Peter Jackson decided to pull his camera out to a wide shot and fully in space, in the frame, have Smeagol and Gollum talking to each other. The only time he got close to doing that was talking into a reflection, talking into water so still it was a mirror. And obviously when the water is so still it's a mirror, that very much means something, doesn't it? Something different to the language cinema used here. So as much as, technically and all that, it's pretty cool cinematic, I do have some, issues with its execution, which I think have very much misled people. What I would say to everybody is imagine what would have happened if this was filmed just like Smeagol and Gollum having an argument, in which case you would be seeing a camera locked onto Sylvanas' face. You would probably see her, just the way that they shot Gollum and Smeagol, basically.
The cleanest way to do it would be like any other show where she's talking into a mirror. She's talking into a mirror. That's the boundary. That's her other self she's speaking to, as opposed to another person who is also herself.
Yeah.
I think everyone would understand that very clearly, but it wouldn't allow for interesting shot dynamics that they've used here. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the problems they've foregone what I think is extremely good storytelling for better and cooler looking things, which is going to be worse overall. And I think that's kind of that's the problem, because I know people will kind of likely be annoyed that we're defending thematic choices and stuff like that, or the thematic potential of the story. I think that's everywhere, especially if you look at 9.2. That's going so heavy into precursor and forerunner stuff, which is all, there's so much you can do with that, as has been shown in a vast variety of franchises. There's a huge amount you can do with that thematically that's really interesting. Speaks to players, speaks to humans, speaks to your very soul, but then you go and the execution doesn't have the time or room to do any of that correctly. Yeah. It's left very firmly in the writer's room and not implemented into the game.
I would say just understand the visual storytelling differences between the characters of Gollum and Elliot Alderson. And I think you'll get there and maybe understand why there's...
Yeah, I definitely think the problems run deeper than how the cinematics overall shot. But
that's true. I think, though, the cinematic accidentally misled people a bit.
Yeah.
With how it was executed, I think. Yeah, I mean, as for the actual lore of this, like, what is Sylvanas' culpability? Because if we think about this situation, if we think about this situation, it's like a big swath of her personality is ripped out. And, you say, is it good and bad Sylvanas? Well, I mean, if you carve away quite evidently a lot of somebody's empathy and compassion,
then
you can certainly see how someone's going to see that as good and bad, especially because the one character we know is the Ranger General that died heroically for her people and fought to the very last, and the other version is Big Tree Burner.
Yeah, like, honestly, if the Sylvanas novel comes out and it starts to show more nuance between these two, then I think that they've completely and utterly failed in their mission as storytellers.
And I think it will.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yep.
I think that you'll probably pick up the Sylvanas novel and you'll actually be able to read through it, and it will probably be a pretty good, coherent novel.
Yeah.
That will feel quite weird as a World of Warcraft player, because the novel will be so much more satisfying than your experience of the video game from the narrative perspective as it pertains to the character of Sylvanas.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that a lot of this potential is falling apart to this, because I suppose you know what annoys me more than anything else? This story of culpability despite domination magic belongs to Arthas.
True.
It's belonged to Arthas since Warcraft 3. I think she has a decent story of vengeance and all that stuff, but given Arthas was the first person to have to deal with this problem, literally as far as we were concerned, I feel like he would have been a better vehicle for it, but they like Sylvanas too much and wanted to make the possibly redeemed, possibly slightly redeemed evil villain lady, which is, I think that's kind of the problem.
It's like they've already done this with Sylvanas.
Yeah.
Like, this is the second time that Sylvanas has been dominated. And if you actually look at the whole story of Sylvanas, not dominated, sorry. The last time she was dominated was a long, long, long time ago. I guess, having her mental jimmies rustled by the big Mr. Niplino, jailer.
Jailor.
Because, she gets killed, soul fractured by Arthas, then she's mind controlled, dominated, right? Domination magic. And then, she escapes from Arthas when the Lich King weakens, and that's why people really liked the character of Sylvanas, because she'd been so wronged, she'd been so violated in that way, and then she tried to, I suppose, rise above that and carve a future out for herself. Now she still did some pretty fucking vile shit in vanilla when you actually get into that lore, the human tests and everything.
Yeah.
But that's why people like the character, because she had that backstory. But what they've actually then done is they've now made it such that, I mean, we've never known the Ranger General since that bit in Warcraft 3. And the Sylvanas that we see is not really a Sylvanas who has been changed by her trauma and changed by her struggle and her fights. Yeah. She's a character that has been changed via the mechanics of a sword. And I think that this is what happens when you get lore and world building people, but you don't get people who really have an excellent understanding of telling a great character arc. Because when you end up robbing Sylvanas of so much of her agency and making it so that so many of her acts are happening under, extreme circumstances that she isn't aware of and that we aren't aware of, well, then all you're doing is you're taking so much of that from those characters and you're throwing it over to Zoval to try to make him to look cool. But he's the lamest villain Blizzard have ever created. Like, by far.
Literally worse than Hogger.
Yeah, literally worse than Hogger. And I think that's the issue. And when we look at what's happening, I mean, I know... See, I don't really know who leads the lore. They certainly make it seem like Steve Denuser leads the lore these days. I mean, I think Afrasabi used to do that, but obviously Afrasabi's gone.
Yeah, I think if the question was posed, then they would say it's a community effort by the whole team.
Yes, they always do. And they do actually have, I think, more narrative designers now than they ever did. But at least from direction, and we did some looking into Kingdoms of Amalur, into 38 Studios. Yeah. They had a massive interest in transmedia narrative.
Yep, and Kingdoms of Amalur was one of those games that had almost no coherent story as far as the initial crux that kept you going. It was very generic, but it had a substantial amount of depth as far as lore goes. A lot of it was, maybe, right, I've just read a book on Irish folklore, let's use that and change some names. Which, generally speaking, I'm okay with as long as it's fairly well done in terms of, you understand the themes, recreate them. There was a whole lot of stuff that I remember spending hours just dealing with this Fae court. And that was one corner of the game that had lots real deep backstory stuff to it, and the content was all kind of meh. But there's a massive amount of depth there, so you can see where their focus is.
Yeah, I
going
think
forward.
You can see how that was an expertise that probably served them well, because I don't think 38 died for those reasons. 38, from what I understand, died because of financial mismanagement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that was them trying to create lore that would support the Kingdoms of Amalur game, an upcoming MMO, and I believe other sort of transmedia narrative. I think they were really trying to build the next big IP, the next Warcraft.
I mean, I believe Kingdoms of Amalur was supposed to be an MMO at some point, or it was the groundwork for an MMO, all that stuff. It very much felt like it took massive inspiration from World of Warcraft.
See, I've forgotten his name. Baseball Man. He's a big MMO.
Man, Kurt Schilling.
Kurt Schilling, that's it.
Thanks, Emirate.
But I think what you can see has happened is that those things, you can tell that there's a lot of lore and ideas behind all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it feels like it's went in a bit of a new direction as of late. And they're struggling to merge some of that new direction with the established feel of this IP. Yeah. And then also, it's turning out that they have a lot more lore ambition than they have either storytelling chops to tell the story that is perhaps a bit of a vehicle for that lore. Basically just that. And that's the thing with Blizzard. Look, they've never been incredible storytellers. What they have been able to do is use the basics, like the language of cinema, really well to make cool cinematics and cool moments. And they've generally been able to ride rule of cool and very fundamental power fantasies to pretty great success. And generally you can see whenever they keep it simple, even if their dialogue is cheesy, it ends up being fun cheesy. But what we're now seeing is they are trying to do way more in-depth shit, but they basically don't seem to have all the chops. Or they do have the chops, but they split it across all the transmedia narrative stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't have the runtime. Sylvanas needed to be even a character like any of the FF14 villains actually.
Literally.
They're on screen a lot, and
Substantially.
you get to understand them really well. Like one of people's favorite characters in FF14, the primary antagonist of 5.0. He's on screen a lot, and when you're dealing with him, you get the character, and that's why it's an appealing character to people.
Yeah, I mean it's a case where any even secondary antagonist spends so much time on screen that you spend almost as much time with them on screen, either in some relevance with your character or not. Yeah. That you spend as much time with them as you do your allies, and you get to see them grow and change as they go along, or at least you are compellingly told a lot of their motivation from their angle, and then other people interject with counterpoints and stuff. So you've got, okay, it explains basically the entire spectrum of what's going on, instead of, having you to fill in the dots yourself or buy the book to fill in the dots, which I think is a large amount of the problem, where I think they're writing well-crafted encyclopedias in the lore design, narrative design offices over there. Of that, I have no doubt. Very obvious when you look at 9.2 and you go, oh, well, you can see, well, you've got all these massive grand plans for the cosmos and all these inhabitants of it, but you're giving us the cliff notes as opposed to the story, which is not how a story is told, sadly.
Exactly, because why is there a plot? It's not so that cool shit can happen. It's so that we can see our characters progress. And
not even... Oh, yeah.
And we have this situation where we get character moments.
Yeah.
But we don't really get their story. And experientially, we don't get to live it with them. Yeah. And FF14 wins so much by having us live it with them. Yeah. Plus, in FF14, we're literally a character. Whereas in WoW, the Mawwalker is at best a passive onlooker who does shit for people.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because obviously in FF you basically start treated as a mute bodyguard, like we feel like we are in World of Warcraft all the time, and then as they went, they're like, no, we'll make the Warrior of Light more of a character, and then that progresses really well and is astoundingly done in Endwalker, by the way. It's fucking wonderful, the amount of interaction you personally have and how you feel as a player. It's fucking it's good. Anyway, I had a point and I've now since lost it. I can't remember what it was about.
I think one place then is, people use the word writing, and writing can mean so many different things, because writing is, you could say it's different to narrative design. Narrative design is something writers will do. But what are you doing? Are you writing dialogue? Are you writing a scene? Are you doing macro narrative design? And I think with WoW, it's basically, they do not have a robust macro narrative design.
Yeah.
Like when it came to us doing our game, like one of the things that got us the publishing deal was having our macro narrative design super well laid out, and publishers really meshing with our macro narrative design in combination with some of the scenes of dialogue we were able to show. So it was that thing like, okay, you've got these cool big scale ideas, and then we're like, okay, and I can see that you're executing on those. And the issue I think that we're running into here is the macro narrative design is not complete within the game.
Yeah, and I think the most simple way, cause I've been ruminating a lot on story stuff recently the past while, and I've been mostly thinking, what's the point? Like, what is the point of World of Warcraft? So I was thinking about stuff that I particularly enjoy more than anything else storytelling wise, and this isn't to say World of Warcraft should be this. But in terms of a story, I think you have to if you're trying to be very compelling, and especially if you're trying to be a market leader today, you need to have a point. You need people to remember what story that you've been told. They need to walk away richer for it. I think that's a lot of the part of good storytelling, is trying to enrich people's lives through either, bringing back old wisdom, having a unique perspective on something that you're trying to communicate, or just, here's a retelling of a very classic tale that has very appropriate human themes that you go through, where it's like you can look at that from the concept of like a Persona game, where Persona games are basically deep looks into psychology. As soon as Persona 3 came out, everyone's like, oh yeah, this is just oh, I see the writer has read Freud and written a game. Fantastic.
Big Sigmund the
Yeah.
game.
And then you go to Persona 4 and you're like, yes, I see you've now read Jungian psychology because it's all about the shadow. And then P5 is about the collective unconscious. And you're like, okay, cool. They're reminiscent of things that speak to humans overall, and they're very, very strong. You can go for like a lesser version of that, which, you look at Last of Us or God of War, and they're very human society level stuff, where God of War, obviously, dad, son, all the themes Kratos goes through. Where are any of those in World of Warcraft that we feel as players?
As players, that's the thing. It's not connected to the player character enough.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. It doesn't need to be connected to the player character.
Experience
We
through the player
need to
character.
experience other characters can have experiences that we can be tag along with in a way. But
like Thrall Draka. That was a scene where I saw people absolutely love it. And my perspective on it was, I'm walking around as two NPCs talk with each other, and I don't know these NPCs. Because if that was a conversation that happened between trying to think of FF characters in a way that's, let's just say, Alphino and Alize.
yeah,
Then because I have spent so much time with those characters, I feel like connection with those characters. And those characters have confided in my character. It would hit a lot harder. But instead, all that I see is Thrall having some dialogue with his dead mum, but also death doesn't really matter that much anymore. But it does. I mean, it does, but also...
yeah. There's no reason he can't come back and say hello to her every now and again.
And that's why that stuff starts to emotionally land flat.
Yeah,
And I think that's... Yeah, man, I mean, that's the issue. And frankly, I've got to be honest with you, I think I vaguely know where the future of this stuff should be for Blizzard. I think, anyway. I mean, I feel decently strong. It's obviously just my personal opinion.
yeah.
I'll run it past you, and we'll see if you think it's a load of bullshit. Blizzard should probably stop trying to tell these sorts of stories in the game. And they should probably take a fundamental new look at how they do things. And I think they should probably focus on the state of the world and the setting, and focus on an excellent macro narrative that is simple, decently archetypical, and just made for that, honestly, universal enough appeal, in a way where they can keep their deep lore, and they can continue to enjoy that sort of thing, but they can try to have the state of the game world be more driven by the player characters. I think you then shift away from World of Warcraft being fantasy EastEnders, where it's about the interpersonal drama of Blizzard's characters,
Yeah.
and then you move it towards being about, the players and the player organizations. That's perhaps why the Class Order Halls resonated with people.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to shift this lore over, so that, because they just don't have the setup to really have my character feel like, my character is somebody who has a relationship with Jaina.
Yeah.
Because by all sense, my character and Jaina have been through shit together. Going back to Mists of Pandaria, my character was there when was it Jaina's husband died at Theramore, or lover?
No, it was
Wasn't that, or so? No shit.
It was what it called?
It was your man who died at Theramore. Basically one of the most traumatic experiences in Jaina's life, the Mists of Pandaria.
Did he die there? I thought you. I can't remember. No, because he didn't die there. It was not her.
Ronan.
Was it not her assistant? Or am I losing my?
Or her
marbles?
assistant dies too.
Oh,
no,
so is
it's
it
Ronan
Ronan?
dies in the big
Oh, okay.
explosion, I believe.
I forgot. I thought she was with the dragon at the time.
Was she not with
that-
Kaligos after Ronan? Am I losing my
so
marbles?
I thought she was. Oh yeah.
Ronan
sacrificed life.
Yeah, so-
that's Illyria's wife.
So, what am I frigging on about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or sorry, no. Reese's
Varisa.
husband. Sorry, yeah. No, yeah, because the point was that she split off with Kaligos because she was acting out after
Yes.
being tremendously horrified after losing Ronan, who is
So-
a close ally and her assistant, I believe.
I was there
Yeah.
whenever Jaina's student died, whenever her people died. One of the most traumatic experiences in her life. And Jaina still talks to me like a bit of a stranger quite often. It's these sorts of things that are a big issue because they genuinely, I think, don't know who the player character is. And so long as this sort of thing continues, they're not going to be able to tell an FF-like story. And in a way, that's okay. They don't have to.
Yeah, they absolutely
But
don't.
instead, they have to do something else really good.
Yeah, which was when you go back and think about the stories they told in Westfall, where oh, what's the state of the world? Oh, Stormwind. Oh, Stormwind's such a beautiful place, and then you go and you find out, oh, hang on, there was exploitation of labor and lower class involved in building Stormwind, and now we have to deal with these people who are resorting to the last thing they can, the last resort, which is violence, to get their comeuppance for this. That is like one of the most classic kind of rich tales you can tell in a world where it's like, oh, yeah, here's the political differences, here's the differences between classes, here's infighting going on over injustice been done, and you can kind of go, oh, well, I can empathize with both sides. Oh, this is interesting. There's quandaries involved. Who's right? Who's wrong? We have to decide. Sometimes we have to decide because the quest says go kill the bad guy. There's stuff like that you can do. Or you can just go for, here's Jaina. She doesn't remember you. Whoops.
Yeah, even though I've borne witness to some of her darkest moments.
Yeah, I mean, you saved her from Thros. Did you not? Oh, another Mallwalker saved me from Torghast. Oh, whatever.
Like, your Blizzard, your Macronardo design is shockingly poor for the story you're trying to tell. What's happened here is you think your characters are really cool. And that is your right. And you know what? I played Warcraft 3 just like you guys. And you're right. Your characters are really cool. Mm-hmm. But in Warcraft 3, I controlled Jaina. I controlled Arthas. In World of Warcraft, I am my character. And my character may as well not exist because, as you know, my character has been there through most of Jaina's traumatic incidents in the last 20 years. And she doesn't know me. She, we don't really... Like, where's the moment of where it's just nice and slow and I sit down and obviously I'm riffing on something from FF at a stage in the game? Where's the bit where I have a cup of coffee with Jaina and there's a bit of a chat?
Yeah, or pour water in your room and have her talk to you.
Where are the... Yeah, because if they want us to connect with these characters, they have to start doing things like that. And if they don't want to do things like that, they need to realize, okay... And you know what? That's fine because, our characters, say Varian Rin, I never really felt like I should have had a super deep relationship with Varian because, I mean, he'd probably see me as some sort of, that's a kick-ass hunter over there. And, we've been through a few things together, but, we're not really deep friends. Yeah. And whenever Varian dies, I feel like that kind of works because it's like, oh shit, so this person who's, lived honorably, has died honorably, but also, oh my god, what does this mean for the state of the world? What does this mean for the Alliance? Vol'jin dies. What does this mean for the Horde? That is these things really impacting like the state of the world, the state of the factions. And it's all about the player's identity within the world. So the player cares about that because they identify as an Alliance player. And they identify with the Eastern Kingdoms. That's why those sorts of things work really well within an MMO story.
It's a World of Warcraft, not the people of Warcraft.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is a sort of conversation I think we need to get out there. Yeah. Basically. So, there you go. I'm sure I could have other thoughts here, but I'd like to... See, even Jonathan here saying, I don't want FF level storytelling in WoW. It's like, WoW actually is probably not best served by being World of Aetherite conversations. Yeah. That's not what World of Warcraft is.
I mean, here's like, I guess one of the solutions is, and very obviously, I'm going to look at the people here. Well, news quieted down a little bit at the end of November, but for all of November, Riot Games ruled the world effectively. Because League of Legends, no one gives a shit about Caitlyn, Jinx, Vi, Victor, Jace. No one gives a shit about those in League of Legends. They're just characters you play. There's no storytelling. But then you have Arcane, and you're like, oh, these characters are very important now. And you haven't had to re-architect your game, so we have all these storytellers with them. You've done it in a different medium. You've done it a different way. Same with the Ruined King storyline in that game. Same with, I guess, other stuff's not been really been too heavy story-wise, but I guess Nunu and Willump in that game. I can't remember what it was, that song of whatever it's called. I can't remember the name. Anyway, they could have World of Warcraft be the World of Warcraft, where you have all of the world going on, and then you just have games set in the world doing other things, or books set in the world doing other things with characters, like they do fairly well with I can't remember their names because it was that long, but Saffronetta and the other one, the characters they had in Before the Storm, that were book unique characters. They could have books that we'd be excited to pick up because they're just books. Maybe you don't want to read a book, that's fine. You could go watch the TV show or the cartoon or the web series shorts, or go play the other game. That's the kind of angle I think they could do, because trying to get all of that storytelling they want to do in this big world, this big modern IP, they're just properly square peg round hole. That's what they're ultimately doing, I think. Really, I guess that's the thing they should. Hopefully they're having these conversations internally of going, right, how do we find a square hole for the square peg? I guess.
Yeah, I think if there was any way to pull it, it's basically just, let's return to big, archetypical, maybe a little bit cheesy stories.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of people, it's like, well, this will make the lore less interesting. No, you can do that and still keep the lore being something that people are interested in. Because, let's be real, lore interest had always kind of been at its highest in and around like the Legion era, I think. And the Legion era is when we had a big, simple story with interesting lore.
Yeah.
Instead of now where it's got more complex and technical. It's as if they saw that, like, Pyro and us, etc., were doing these in-depth lore videos, and then it's like they doubled down in that area of the lore. But it's kind of misunderstanding, like, we were doing those videos because we kind of like the overall setting. Yeah. But when it's like these just kind of like self-justifying levels of lore complexity, then we all just start to get bored and wonder away.
Yep.
That's the thing, yeah. Blizzard can basically stick with rule of cool and work out what are just fundamental ways to make this a game world that people really want to be in, and they can be very successful off that. But I think the more that they are trying to do this character drama stuff, but without actually putting the time into them, there is one way it could work, actually. And it might involve sacrificing Moonberry and Clea and some of those characters who appear.
Sorry.
And it would be if you want to do these big, deep stories with these characters, then you're basically saying this slot, that's the Scions of the Seventh Dawn and the faction leaders. In which case, we must be questing with these characters.
Yeah.
And spending that time with them, meaning that the A plot has got to be the primary focus of the story, instead of just a whole bunch of world building happens, and then through raids and cinematics and sometimes the Covenant campaign chapters, we get this. That's how it has to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting thing Cobra brought up, saying it might help if their card game wasn't an AU, alternate universe, because Hearthstone has the capacity for that and actually succeeds on that. Like I think I've said this a number of times on stream before, because every time they release new story content in Hearthstone, I'm like, was this mind blowing? Have I walked away a different person? No. Have I been thoroughly satisfied by an adventure in the Warcraft universe? Yes. And I really like some of them that rely on existing characters, like the Ilden stuff was really, really good. But the ones with the League of Explorers, Reno Jackson, stuff that we've never seen before, is honestly better, I think, because there's more freedom.
I've played some Book of Mercenaries stuff. It was like, I think one of the first one that I got for free or something.
Nice, so nice.
And do you know my instant, as it was 2 a.m. in bed, I'm a bit sleepy, just tapping some Hearthstone on my phone. Do you know what my thought is? I wake up slightly, and I have this thought that appears in my head that is just, wow, this feels like the universe I fell in love with when I was younger.
Yeah.
Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft, feels more Warcraft than a bunch of modern Warcraft right now.
Yeah.
And they need to work out why that is.
Yeah, I mean, what was the Book of Mercenaries one? The Draenei who needed the Shard of Light to save her kid, and then all the other characters interact on the way, and they also want it for their own reasons. And then you have a climactic moment at the end where push comes to shove, who's the moral victor here technically, who needs it most. And there you go. That's a small story. Very, very human stakes. Mother protecting her child. Someone trying to get out of I can't remember what it was. Trying to get out of a personal really bad spot. That was less I guess less on the moral high ground than protecting your child, but still, you can understand their motive. They're like, oh yeah, that was cool. I like that. Very good.
Speaking of as Jonathan Kellogg says, we still don't know the actual motivations behind the jailer.
No,
The
we do.
funniest-
We do. You wanted to remake the reality. There you go.
Obviously, what's that mean? Do you know what my favorite bit of the cinematic was? When Uther says, he basically says, we don't know what the jailer is doing. And I'm like, Uther, big man, you're right. We don't. Can someone please tell us?
Yep.
Yeah. So, man, if there's any fucking read from this, it is macro narrative design and adjusting your ends to your means. And that means making some tough calls that are not selfish and self-indulgent. Because if you're going to sacrifice the in-game player experience of your story in order to tell the story in the lore and to push the story in the lore that you personally are the most interested in, then you're not serving your players anymore. You're serving you. The reason why we are here in game development is not to work in the Warcraft IP that we love.
Yeah.
It is to provide an excellent experience for our players where they come out of the game, they've taken something with them, they're feeling happy afterwards. Like, game development fundamentally is serving other humans and trying to do right by them. And whenever stories, and you see this in movies sometimes, whenever they get too self-indulgent and all of that stuff, you begin to realize you're not serving your viewer, you're serving yourself.
Yeah, I think the key word there is two, because if you don't indulge at least a little bit creatively and draw on your
authentically be you.
Yeah, draw on your own experiences, draw on your own knowledge, and not necessarily your own experiences, but your own view of experiences. Because I don't think people have to really deeply engage with some horrible atrocities to understand what it could be like and write about them. But it's that case where, and I think this is going to be generally a problem when you design by committee for a narrative or for a lore. There's no singular voice. And there doesn't need to be one voice, but there does need to be a director going, well, listen, we have agreed that this is the theme we're going for. We will direct all of our resources to make sure. Obviously, you can have little other things as well.
Yeah.
But this is the point we're going for with either this overall story or this little bit of story. It's a thing where that's a hallmark of basically every story I've enjoyed that's stuck with me for longer than, that was an 8 out of 10. Pretty good, well executed, happy enough, and then I forget. The stuff that sticks with me is when someone puts their heart and soul into it, but in a way that's for others to enjoy, as opposed to please pay attention to my deficiencies, which is a way a lot of writers actually write.
And I think a part of that is it's having things like epilogues that are good and emotionally satisfying.
Of course.
Do you want to know why people like Return of the King and why people like a bunch of the Final Fantasy stuff? It's because it gives you a emotionally satisfying end. I remember seeing movie reviewers be like, the pacing of the ending is too long and it's self-indulgent.
Idiots.
To that I say,
them.
no, fuck off. It's
Absolutely.
Return of the King does not have a self-indulgent ending. Yeah. Return of the King has an ending that appropriately acknowledges viewer investment in its, it being the end of a 3-movie long trilogy. Yeah. It needs to wrap those things up in an emotionally satisfying way, or else the audience won't be satisfied. And if you just want to make it shorter and tighten it, no. No. And, maybe there's something to be said there, and this gets out of games and into movies, but maybe it impacts games as well because of budgets and stuff. But it's why that thing of this movie must be no longer than this hours and this minutes. I get there's financial reasons, but often it does rob the viewer of the emotional catharsis that the creator wants them to feel.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think.
Like it had endings. Yeah, that's because it had a lot to wrap up because it was 3 movies.
It was long, yeah.
You know, those endings are part of the ending.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like it's those parts that always get me the most because that is when, you know, especially if you're watching a movie, right? If you're watching a movie in the and this is like a whole user experience thing to think about. When people are watching a movie in a theater, they are, as soon as the movie's over, they've got the credits to roll through. But usually, especially now, if there is a post-credit scene, fuck you, Marvel, for making those a thing. I hope that goes away forever.
Oh, yeah. Can't stand
it's
them.
Bullshit. Anyway, oh yeah, you enjoyed that. Well, here's an undercut with thinking about something else, idiot. Anyway, the idea of, you know, you see the credits, you could sit there, do the credits, see who's worked in the movie. Nowadays, that would be brutal because you'd be lucky to remember a couple of the cast members and director. Never mind all the other credit people. Not to say credits are pointless; they're extremely useful, but. You know, the movie finishes, lights on, everyone up, out. Next movie has to start. Where's the time for reflection that isn't interrupted? Where's the time to go, oh yeah, how'd that wrap up, how'd that end, how'd that, you know, the come down of it, in effect.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll want to bake that into your movie for a better UX experience versus here's you been blasted by lights and people come and sweep into the floor behind you. Get out the fuck would you? That's the stuff that's really important, and I think a lot of places just don't go for that because it's not more important than any other part to them, but I think it's like critical. Not having an epilogue is, and a long one that has content to it, is such a waste of everything you've done before. It's almost like where's my food analogy? It's almost like, I don't know, you're making some sort of nice shepherd's pie and you forget to crust up the potatoes on the top,
no.
or you're making a creme brulee and you forget to bring the torch to it. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Something like that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's like often what happens is the ending resolves the plot, but you need to resolve the characters because the characters are like the real reason why someone's there.
Yeah. So you don't in a game you don't, you know, the end boss of an RPG doesn't hit 0 HP and just credits, off you go. They go, okay, well, we're done. What's happened?
Oh, it's like that in that Best of the Worst episode. The movie ends with like the action guy like blowing the other one up, and he blows up, and then it does a freeze frame middle of the explosion, the end, and then it's like after this he turned himself into the police.
Yeah,
and it's a fucking incredible moment. That's
what
we're talking about. We're just basically talking about stories.
What are we talking about?
Stories, how they're told, how can apply to an MMO, and, you know, the different ways of doing things. Because you can be an FF, you can be a Star Wars. Yeah, Blood Debts, that was it. Blood Debts. Oh, I love that episode.
Yeah. That's good.
All right, there we go. Okay, let's move on.
Let's move on.
I've got a severe headache now. Oh my
nice
god.
one. That's what you get for thinking about Sylvanas.
That's the thing. See, I basically get a tension headache.
When you think about Sylvanas.
Do you know what I've noticed, right? I get a tension headache every second day. And I'd say 60% of the time it's on the right-hand side, and then the rest it's on the left-hand side. And it's very annoying. That's what happens when you're really stressed and your entire upper body is tense all the time. I should really ask it to not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Could you please stop, shoulders, please?
Yeah. Just get into a sensory deprivation tank for a couple hours.
Oh yeah, that's it. Please just punch my sternoclaviomastoid until it finally gives up and stops giving me bother.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, so Sylvanas, of course, she has got a new look.
Where did she get it from?
Cool. I think this is like a bit of a recolor of some of her Legion.
I think it's some of it is similar. I think it's recolor.
No, it's not
It's just
because
sort of
there's
similar
like some
design.
midriff there, and the Legion one was like completely the brown.
Yeah.
I think armor.
Yeah, this is very different. I think it's thematically, I think they're trying to draw together her as a complete being now, where she's honoring her heritage. You see the tints of blue and stuff like that, and then you go and you see it's kind of gray, not brown, like she's not, evil murderous Sylvanas anymore, but she's not.
Her eyes
just
are
back to
blue.
normal. Yeah, eyes
Eyes
are
are blue.
That means she's good, apparently.
Eyes are
But
blue.
she's-
She's
yeah.
got that back. We like this tweet as well. Just, I really wish they'd actually like explain where she got this armor from, why she's wearing it, what it means to her. This is stuff that's important for characters, and this is why I thought this was a real quality tweet.
Yeah.
Good one, Porter Gage. Good tweet. They did this with Thrall too. No one of actually putting the new armor on and what it means to them, just suddenly appearing with an unknown explanation. And it's the sort of thing, as much as, maybe in a, a big clap back to movies and money in Hollywood, we're going to be like, oh, superhero movies, or they come out of the factory farm. But one of the things in a superhero movie that's quite important is when they get their suit.
That's such a huge part
It's
of
an important thing in the superhero movie, and usually it means something to people.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take new Spider-Boy,
Yep.
his first suit, his little hoodie, that means something to him as a character. And I know a lot of people, they don't like his big tech bro suit, but that has a lot of meaning to that character because. I think like Tony Stark is a bit of not a father figure, but maybe a father figure. I forget exactly.
Sort of mixture of father figure and general inspiration,
sort of mentor inspiration.
Yeah.
So like all that means something to him.
Yeah, and they play with that very much in terms of like how the actual plot of that movie unfolds. Is are you ready for the suit? Because the suit carries responsibility because of the costume.
Actually,
all that stuff.
Thank you for putting a message and reminding me there. Terrible in chat. Tataru. The best Scion.
Fuck me, I can't even say.
Where would they be? I mean, Alphino and Estinian would have bankrupted the Scions. And I mean, all these people anyone who goes near them and gets access to the company account.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're all these rich twats. You're like, how much is a glass of milk there, Alphino? And he'll say back, 3 million gil. We're like, what?
Yep.
Are you a wee rich boy?
Yeah, no, but
Tataru's there as the
the thrifty one.
The thrifty one, the smart one.
Yeah, the
most seasoned drinker.
The mercantile genius.
But one of the nice things is any time that a character in FF14 gets a new costume, not any time, but most times, a lot of the time, Tataru has actually made it for them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like her involvement in that is actually like her own personal character arc as well, which is really fucking nice to see. And even then, they've got lore about where people's armors originally came from and stuff like that is really, really nice. And it's such an important part. Like you see someone and they're wearing new threads, and you're like, oh, you've very, very, very clearly outlined that this is a pivotal moment of character development. Is that cheesy? Yes. Am I sitting in the dark at 3 a.m. going, fuck yeah, let's go? Yes. Yeah. Also that.
So here's the deal with this. Sylvanas and Illyria probably not going to talk for a while.
No.
The one sister who you could maybe make an inroad with is Verisa.
Yeah.
So what happens if, Sylvanas has this armor and Verisa and Sylvanas, have dialogue with each other, in-depth dialogue, and Verisa is really struggling to overcome, but Verisa knows, in the same way we've discussed the moral culpability, Verisa knows that while Sylvanas has done terrible things, she's also been a victim.
Yeah.
And in order to help Sylvanas, maybe Verisa is like, well, here's an old bit of armor from home. Here's your mother's bow, or, maybe is it their brother. Mm-hmm. The brother that the Windrunners had. Yeah. Maybe he had a bit of jewelry or a keepsake, or maybe something that would visually tie into Sylvanas' armor. And Verisa is struggling, but is, in this scene, maybe it's a bit of a teary scene. Perhaps Verisa, hands that over. And that's a moment. And it's a sort of thing, players are going to struggle with Sylvanas because of all of this. But if they actually get to experience that story, where via a character like Verisa, then you're going to start having the character moments in the work. And then you're going to have this, mild change of the Sylvanas model, in actuality be a story beat. And obviously, if this was to happen to a character like Thrall, I'd maybe care a bit more because, frankly, I am burnt out on Sylvanas, like many of you are. But I am saying, if you are going to do something like this, probably is better to do it via character.
Yeah, it is you can do it this way and have it all implied, but if you want to lampshade it later on, maybe do it as a lampshade it as a like I say, don't talk about it now, talk about it later when she's back or if she comes back. But it's such an opportunity. It is such an incredible opportunity for, hey, make this armor mean something to people. Mm-hmm. Because as it stands, it's just, I guess you gave someone a new model, cool. Yeah, cool, to make her look different from where she was. But then you make you make it really obviously very important, and then people will care.
that's how you do it. That's how you do it. So anyway, that's something we noticed. But there you go, new Sylvanas model. Now moving on, there are some new voice lines for Sylvanas. These are just individual lines. We don't really know the context, so it's very important to say.
Yeah.
We don't know the context, and context matters. I mean, even all the little things of execution matter. Even think of the Hitchcock thing where, the man walks from left of frame to right of frame, then from right of frame to left of frame, and it completely changes how somebody reads the scene. That's like how much the small details matter. So, to be fair to them. Now, what does she say? Not a Banshee Queen, not a Ranger General, but always a Windrunner.
Yeah, so she's become who she is, but she's both.
Yes.
Or neither, I guess.
I've found you before, my love. I will find you again, no matter how long it takes.
If that's about Nathanos, I will sigh my lungs out of my chest. For a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I can certainly think of one of those reasons, and as I look at you, I know what you're thinking, and I'm thinking the exact same thing. It's a little bit meta, and it's definitely not the sort of thing we can talk about in the stream.
No, absolutely not. But it's more the idea that, I guess, again, okay, they suppose they did a little bit, but it's been so drip and drab over time that they've been exploring that as a relationship. It hasn't seemed important to her at all. Like,
Pretty abusive at times.
Since when? When did he get his new body?
Was that
like
pre-Legion?
Was it pre-Legion? Was it?
Oh, you know what? I forget. It's in a short story anyway. Is it? Is it the Dark Mirror short story?
I think it might be. But it's like that. It's like it hasn't mattered since then. So why are we going to care if you haven't told us about any of this realistically, or expecting us to remember something from 100 years ago when you've had the opportunity to explore it this time? Feels a little bit just wrap up like, shit, we forgot this. Fuck sliding. Something like that, I guess.
Yeah. Colin, look, man, I do think that this is constructive. I mean, look, the criticisms here are very real. But, when I talk about this, I'm not saying have a scene that explains this change of armor. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that as I do believe that this is how you could actually get, you could mine some emotional depth out of it if this came along with a scene between her and her sister. People would really care about. In the same way, many people, I think, were correctly saying in Legion that we should have seen more interaction between, obviously, Illidan, Tyrande, and Malfurion, because their whole lives are so connected, and indeed so connected to the Warcraft universe.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is looking how other properties across the entire history of media has done things that has been more satisfying. And because obviously you can say, well, you talk about like objective storytelling techniques and stuff like that, but if you think about it even as a mixture of your own history over things you've watched or read or played, you think about them, well, wouldn't it be really nice if World of Warcraft did this as well? I think that's... Obviously you can go, well, they don't have time. Still, it's kind of up to them to have time to do the nice things and the possible things. So I think it's all very constructive. I mean, there's so many things I could say that aren't constructive in the least, so I don't say them, because what's the point?
Yeah.
It's I don't know how widespread this saying is, but if you don't have anything nice to say nothing at all. Generally, how I tend to operate, like, well, in public at least, but yeah.
Yeah, like we always do try to offer another solution or something like that. Other lines then, I will never serve. I mean, look, that could literally fair play, Colin. Absolutely. Look, the more we can be constructive and try to publicly think about these problems, I think the better. That's a lot of the angle I try to take with the Sylvanas one in our main video. Because in our main video, I don't really spend that much time being like, well, I took the decision to move more into the how do we analyze this from a moral standpoint more than kind of like the criticism stuff. But I suppose we got a little bit more into just some aspects of the visual storytelling today. But for other things he said, I will never surf. I mean, look, that could just be a flashback or something. So,
I mean, a lot of this does come across to me like it is click dialogue.
Yeah.
Clicker says this.
Yes, we live in prisons of our own making. I will face whatever comes. And that's very true. There's times, I'm kind of like, fucking hell, I've really overscheduled myself. I'm in a prison of my own making. But of course, this one is also, riffing a bit on the line, Azeroth is a prison, I will set us all free.
Yeah.
So, she's realized this prison's kind of my own making. I mean, sort of it's of her own trauma and abuse in a way because of, she didn't make her situation. It was thrust upon her.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I think an awful lot is the people always have, relatively speaking, a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Unless domination magic's involved. So her at least understanding that she, is in a prison of her own making is like, okay, at least you understand your own culpability in this. And everyone's the same. I suppose it could be speaking to a wider theme of how we all need to expand our horizons and stuff, but I don't know about that.
The cycle must be broken. We are more than slaves to our torments. So this is like kind of interesting.
She's talking about Torghast.
But she's still saying the cycle must be broken.
Yeah, which is, I guess, one of the things that it bugs me because we still don't know what fucking cycle she's talking about. The only thing we can kind of hint at after knowing about the Crown of Wills and stuff like that there is this weird idea of maybe there's something going on that we haven't felt. In which case, if we haven't felt it, why are we solving it? Please explain.
I mean, I would certainly say with that, like, the whole anima thing is like a bit uncomfortable. You think about how the first one set all of this up, and you actually have these constant beings that basically just exist to gather a resource for that then to be put to use. So, I look at that and I kind of think like, all right, Zoval's a real dickhead, but there's probably a nugget of truth at the bottom of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's... and this is why I didn't like the fact that they went down the whole anima death, you become fertilizer and Ardenweald stuff to begin with, because it's... I guess it's such an immensely difficult topic to talk about and cover all of its depth, because you start to think about, the cycle must be broken. Are you talking about the cycle of life and death? Does that mean we all have eternal life? Do we all have immortality? Well, that's a fucking can of worms and a half. Because, what's life if, you're immortal? The idea is if you ever start to ask questions and break the fabric behind what is life, if you don't have a satisfying answer, and that's a satisfying answer to get to, as soon as you think, well, okay, so as long as Zoval isn't, or as long as anyone isn't coming to our lives and ending them prematurely, cutting potential down in order to satisfy the needs of Shadowlands, you go, well, if that's the natural cycle, so be it. It's what we kind of do. We have medicine to prolong lives, but we can't become immortal yet.
But
and everyone's relatively happy with where we are.
Could it be like us farming chickens? There's some people who are going to say, all right, well, if that's in a battery farm, that's really bad.
Yeah.
There's other people, like say vegetarians, vegans, who will say, okay, well, a free-range chicken, frankly, isn't good enough because it's being bred for slaughter.
Yeah.
In which case, instead of tendies, it's anima. That's the output of this system.
Yeah, I guess that's a thing where, do I trust this story to have the time to go into all of that stuff? I can't imagine it, and they haven't explained what the cycle is, so I'm thinking generally worst case, because I think I know what they're trying to say with, or what I would expect any story talking about life and death to traditionally be saying. And in this case, it's not really covered that all that well, so I'm pretty disappointed with this, unless they find a very nice way to go, and the cycle was actually this. But I don't know what that is. Who knows?
It's going to take a hell of a lot of an M. Night twist for...
I mean, it's like you... is it... Yeah, you always talk about J.J. Abrams' mystery box.
Big JJ.
I feel like this is a Matryoshka doll of mystery boxes, where we open a mystery box, find another mystery box, and then the mystery box gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, until you're sitting there with a magnifying glass, like a jeweler's magnifying glass, and a pair of tweezers trying to open the last mystery box. Like, is there fucking something of value here? Please!
You're falling into one of those fractal zoom videos on YouTube. Yeah. Never to reach the bottom. There's some character development for Sylvanas in the next bit of this line, though. We are more than the slaves to our torments. Of course, one of our older lines was, we're slaves to our torments. So this is kind of showing a Sylvanas that is willing to rise above her own personal suffering and trauma, which I think means that this is probably a more forward-looking and constructive Sylvanas. And then farewell, the true battle lies ahead. Now, of course, a part of being forward-looking and constructive, remember, you can have a character face punishment for their crimes and be, to a degree, a bit redeemed. Because facing your dues with honor is still something that I think people would count as a redeeming thing. As an example, you know, was, I mean, for a very simple archetypical story that people really liked, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He's redeemed. He's definitely not innocent of what he did.
Yeah.
That's a part of why people like the character.
Yeah, he like the way I always visualize his journey is it was on a pretty good track, then went very, very bad track, and at the very last, with the last decision he made, he took one step in the right direction. So you can imagine, okay, if you had lived, you would have been good, which means at the last second you made the right choice. You know, I guess that's the morally grey part. That's the nuance involved, as opposed to just villain bad. Villain bad.
Yeah. So next, then, it's time to talk about exploring Azeroth Kalimdor, and this is this is a complex enough topic, and also I have to be very clear. There's been a community outrage. I think 1 or 2 gaming news websites have covered it.
Yeah.
And we're going to engage with that. We have to be very clear, though. Neither me nor Matt have actually read this book because it's not out yet. But some people were able to get their copies of it early, and a fair amount of people, I think, do not feel that the Horde was given as fair a shake of the stick as the Alliance was. And then the additional complexity into this story is that a lot of the races of the Horde have extremely clear and obvious, real world parallels. So, yeah, I mean, the Tauren, we all know who, what their real life counterpart is. Yeah. The Trolls. I mean, think about that accent. Where's that come from?
Yeah, I mean, they're very, very amalgamated overall, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah, from the different, I guess the Dark Spears or whatever.
Yeah.
Unless you're I guess you're going to Zandalar and it's full of Wakanda references suddenly.
Jesus, yeah.
But, generally speaking, right, that's the way that they did a whole bunch of their races. And, some of them some are more successful than others. Yeah, I think if you look at, say, the Goblins, I mean, they're very focused on money. They, you could definitely say that they kind of appear to have a bit of a tropishly anti-Semitic sort of design.
Yeah, or it's almost certainly like,
yeah, right. Because think about,
I mean, they're the same as. I mean, a lot of their visual design is similar to the goblins in Harry Potter, who fall under a lot of the same criticisms as well.
Or your man who owned Anakin in first thing of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people are just thinking, George.
Yeah.
So, that's like that's the thing there. Where, with the goblins, I mean, they're sort of, if you look at the, I think, common sort of anti-Semitic portrayals of Jewish people, it's going to be obsessed with money, sort of hook-nose. If you look at all of those, what you call them, propaganda, drawings and pictures, the paintings, whatever that were done. Yeah. And, they're sort of taking the piss of that a little bit. And, H there said Italians. I suppose, there's that, like, I guess, like, maybe New Yorkish.
The New York immigrants kind of accent that came from that, yeah.
So, like, that is clearly, like, the sort of cultural touchstone or whatever from which they came. So that's, it's just a part of WoW's history. It's a part of the way the universe has been concepted. Of course, you look at another game like FF14, look at Thavnir. I mean, that's India, and there's elephant people in it.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's India, there's elephant people.
Spit in the nose.
One of the words they use for leader is a Persian word, stuff like that. They have a lot of the kind of that area's influences and everything going on. There's some elements of that where I think people say the accents may be a little bit strong and a little bit almost inappropriate or insensitive, but a lot of the vibe they go for is aiming for. I guess it's interesting because a lot of the beast tribes and similar kind of people have all these these tribal religions in a way, but very, very few of them have direct real life opinions or direct real life corollaries versus the I guess more fantastical ones. Like, it's hard to put the Sahagins on any real life culture because they're fish people.
That's what it's very obvious in both games, and for the most part, I think people saw it as just being it is what it is. It's for the most part like celebratory. Of those things. I think that's why we see Thavnir, and it's like whenever the satrap's talking about the not to like
steal lines from Endwalker. Everybody always talking about like the vast wealth of, you know, like the shining colors, and it's celebratory.
Yeah.
And you know where WoW is doing those things well, it's celebratory. People are like, oh yeah, it's really cool. I get it. You know, nice. You know, people are just gonna like that vibe, and they're gonna gravitate towards it, and it's going to be a strong player fantasy in the game.
Yeah.
So that is how it is, right? And you know, for the most part, people have generally been, you know, had one or two like, that's a bit in the nose, isn't it? But
Yeah, I think
you know, as long as it stays celebratory and, you know, it's not really feeling like sort of punching down on the thing, then it was all grand, right?
yeah.
People are having perhaps different, you know, opinions on this thus far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. It's a very difficult thing because it's so much of what the line between celebratory and insensitive is very, very hard to define subjectively for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that certainly, I think the writers and everyone involved in World of Warcraft would love to be very celebratory of all of this stuff, but falls down to, I guess, a void of information, where we haven't really ever spent a lot of time engaging with some of these people, some of these like races, and celebrating their cultures or stuff like that, or seeing how they're different. Because I mean, what like most of our stuff with goblins is they're very strange at the beginning of the game. When you play a goblin, it's all, you know, capitalism and oh shit, doesn't exist. There's no safety. Just you know, everything's exploding everywhere, which is the kind of fun stuff to deal with. And then you go to in BFA, you go to Galvix's Pleasure Palace, and you're like, this is very hedonistic in a very capitalist way. Very interesting stuff. But you don't really get to spend a lot of time with them and kind of see what the richness of the goblin people. You never experience that. You just see what's the funny bit, and that's kind of where the problem comes from.
Yeah, so from what I can tell, the way that this has been kind of received by people is well, there was one thing on the Night Elves where I think people are genuinely pretty pissed at how they're portrayed. Now, they are being portrayed from a horde perspective, which is maybe the thing to keep in mind.
Except for some of the words used, but anyway, all one word used.
We will, yes. No, we will get to that quite shortly.
Yeah.
But broadly speaking, it seems that there's a few bits that people have taken umbrage with.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of them is of Zakan. People will know him more as Zappy Boy.
Yep.
Basically being like, I think it's not that he's illiterate. I think it's just that he can't speak Thessalian? Thalassian? Thalassian. It's one of those words you read it, you never really speak it out loud.
Yep.
And he gets taught. He gets taught by Lorthamar, and some of the criticism there is that it's kind of like I think the way that I saw it described is it's like, you know, the allegation is that it's kind of like treating, I guess maybe is it like the sort of noble savage stereotype basically.
Yeah.
And I think there was also some people being like, yeah, well, it's sort of insinuating he's not mega literate here, but then there's like trolls are sending letters over there, so it doesn't make sense. So there's some of these things are percolating around the internet. And again, I have to be very clear. Neither me or Matt have actually read this. It's just this story has somewhat popped up in social media. So we do have to sort of, you know, talk about it a bit. Supposedly there's some disregard for established characterizations and general lore. Where people are finding that Eastern Kingdoms, you know, is a celebration, but Kalimdor is just not feeling as good to people. So that's some of it. And there's also some things with characters. So basically, allegedly, what happens with Gazlo is that Gazlo is like portrayed, because Gazlo is like he's a goblin, but he's not, you know, he's not like the worst of what people would think about. Yes, Gazlo is written with Galliwix's personality.
Yeah,
it seems a little bit like that, where Gazlo is like really hardcore on the bottom line and basically hires Rexar to kind of be a bit of an enforcer with the workers.
Yeah, I believe it's the way I read it described was he basically delivers a letter to bust employees in trying to engage together, which, you know, is getting something we're going to talk about. Not maybe the best, but, you know.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, like, that's going against the character of Rexar, and it's going against the character of Gazlo.
Yeah, Rexar's, as far as I was concerned, Rexar is just this nice man who likes animals. walking around, and he will fuck you up if you touch his animals.
Oh, and Underhaven here is saying Gazlo made a huge deal in BFA about treating your workers properly and fairly.
Yeah.
And it seems like it perhaps goes against that in this book.
Yeah. And also it's like, well, yeah, I guess it's just Gazlo was always seen as like the goblin with a heart that kind of like, yeah, I'll be helpful. I'm one of the ones who cares about the horde more so than I do care about what I can stand to gain from it. And they're like, no.
Yeah, so that like other one here. Gazlo has been a nice guy since his inception, even before his introduction in Warcraft 3. In this book, he uses Gallywix's harsh language. So, you know, it's like it seems to be written somewhat out of character for him.
Yeah.
And, you know, you would presume that is on instruction from the Warcraft team, because Sean Copeland, the lore historian guy, does not actually decide where the lore goes.
Yeah.
He basically is in charge of, I suppose, categorizing, collating the team's narrative decisions, and perhaps helping the team keep right within their own lore. So I suppose almost like a continuity sort of fact checker sort of situation, also with some writing being involved.
Something like that.
Yeah, so, you know, there's that. Moving on. Here's some of the bits that are also getting people. Horde-centered exploring book. There's not a single mention of Anshe.
Yep.
And Elune, though, does get some. And I believe, who is the character trained by the Earthen Ring?
I can't remember.
The shaman character trained by the Earthen Ring, the Tauren Earthen Ring, and
It's
that
like,
character says Elune instead of Anshe.
Oh, no, instead of Musha.
Sorry, instead of Musha.
Yeah, it says here, everything here from the bazaars to the temples be dedicated to the goddess of the moon, Elune. The ruins be a sad reminder that Elune didn't spare her people from the sundering or... And to be fair, the fact that it said, you know, the be dedicated is obviously in how that character would speak. If they were trained by the Earthen Ring, or, you know, if they were a troll, you know, and I don't know, I think their shamanism's tied to the Earthen Ring, but, you know, they shouldn't really know goddess of the moon, Elune, unless they're not the, like, apology troll, stumbling all this stuff, and, like, deciding who, you know, maybe they know night elves for some reason, so they're honoring their name, as opposed to, you know, going, to their goddess of the moon, Elune, or we would want that character in that case to say, or as she's known to us, Musha. Something like that, and says like, it's Elune. It feels like it was to people who are really super hyper invested in this lore, it feels a bit like a rush job.
And this is a book for them. And the other thing is we don't actually have the quote here about the Night Elves, which I know your Jimmy's were rather rustled when you read it.
So they were rustled, but then they were unrustled because I realized the perspective it was from.
Okay.
But it was basically, it was something about, I can't remember which character, but it was the Horde perspective of what was happening in the logging camp in Ashenvale and how the Night Elves keep attacking. And they're like, oh, well, something tells me the Night Elves won't stop attacking even when they take their vengeance for Teldrassil, which is kind of leaning into we did nothing wrong. It's their, why are they killing us? We're just chopping down all their trees, which I consider sacred. Which, you know, was back in the day in Warcraft 3 where the Night Elves killed the fuck out of the Warsong group for you know, trying to muscle the way into the trees. They're like, killing trees? Why not harvest them peacefully? Like, might have want to share that technology instead of just going, fucking kill them. But it was like,
I like Night Elves who are just savage.
Yeah, so that's the thing. People really like the idea of the Night Elves being savage because it's like, oh no, they're defending their land. They were the ones invaded this time. This is a peaceful paradise for them. And the orcs are like, sorry, we need lumber for our war machines. That's a good sort of conflict. And now the way it was written is, no. We did nothing wrong. The Night Elves being savages are bad. Actually, they're unjustified in wanting their land back, which is, you know, fair from the Horde perspective. But if you aren't aware that that's from a Horde character's perspective, then you might go, why are you trying to undermine the Night Elves, the way people want Night Elves to be?
Yeah.
But I think in the end, it's relatively pointless because it's fair, I think, anyway.
Yeah, so it's just this interesting situation where there's a lot of excitement over this book because Exploring Eastern Kingdoms was so loved.
Yep.
But you know, there's just been some community outrage, I suppose, from the people who do seem to have got the earlier copies of it.
Yeah, I mean the one that pissed me off the most is the Elune. It's like, and the lack of Anshe, I guess, because I mean, they did a little bit of that in Folk and Fairy Tale, but man, the sheer richness you can have from all of the societies of Kalimdor and all of the people in the Horde, there's like, no, we have to stick to established names and stuff, and we can't go too far out of it. It's very annoying, which is weird because at the same time I'm admonishing them for spreading out too much in terms of how they're dealing storytelling in game, and then the books they don't do, I'm like, fuck you. So it's a little bit of like, could you swap what you're doing here a little bit, maybe be better off. But
yeah, so look, that's just some of the early stuff. It's something that's going on in the community, which is why we're talking about it.
Yep.
We will draw our own conclusions once we've actually received and read the books. But this is something that's going on that's being discussed. That in fact prompted a response from the spouse of the author of this that was basically just clarifying, like, hey, he's just the lore guy, not the creator of the lore, the historian. It's the game dev team who do the making of the lore, and he's got to consult with them very, very, very heavily for everything he does in this book. So, there's that going on, and we'll just have to see. But basically, we need to read the book first, I think, to really get a read in all of this. Certainly, I am concerned about Rexar and Gazlo. I don't want Gazlo to feel like Gallywix. That's just not Gazlo. And I don't really like the idea of Rexar partaking.
I think that's also the part that's actually more annoying than anything else. No one would expect Rexar to not go, fuck off, Gazlo. What do you mean? I'm not getting involved in this. Especially when you think of Rexar back in the day, where what's the very first thing Rexar does? There's an orc dying, and he goes out of his way to deliver his message to orc form.
Yeah.
And that's Rexar, not, sorry? Your workers are trying to unionize? I'll take my axes and Misha will go over and sort them out. Like,
yeah. So look, there's that going on. Let's move on to the next thing though. The community councils went live, and immediately I have seen targeted call out tweets of at least one particular member of the community council. Obviously, not going to show their name or any of that stuff here because we don't want to add to any form of situations going on. Other than to say, likely a mistake, Blizzard, for this to be public. Now, I do believe people were able to use alts for this specific forum, and I think people probably should have done that, to be honest.
yeah.
But yeah, it would have been ideal if this was anonymous under pseudonyms and stuff, because I mean, the issue here is one of what happens if somebody provides feedback in the community council and people don't like it.
Then they get wrecked.
Yes. Underhaven asked if I got in. No, I did not, or at the very least not yet. Which, in fairness, I wasn't really expecting to.
Yeah, no, I think...
At all. They rejected Asmund. See, I didn't get a rejection email, but I really doubt they do that. I think it was just, did you get in? If you did, you got an email. Which, in which case, I probably did get rejected. I don't really mind. I don't take it personally. I understand why. There's, multiple World of Warcraft developers who have blocked me on Twitter, so evidently they probably wouldn't feel safe or whatever, in the work environment if I was involved with that, which obviously is their right to do. They are the arbiters of this. The decision's up to them, so, it is what it is. I don't really care personally.
And also, to be completely fair to them, it's not like you needed invited to the community council for them to understand your opinion or feedback on the game.
That is
because
true.
we're very happy to sit here every Friday and talk about it very openly with all of you. So,
and I will say, look, if I did get into the community council, you wouldn't know who I was on it. I would do it on an alt that I would keep as anon as possible, because the last thing that I would want is any, influencer. I fucking hate that word. Any influencer bullshit to appear there, right? Do they actually block you? That's insane. They did. Look, maybe they just don't want me criticizing their work on their Twitter account. Could be that. But I do have to imagine if they don't want to see that on their Twitter account, they probably don't want to see it in their workplace as well.
Yep, which is unfortunate, but ultimately, it's especially if it's not specifically their role to see things being criticized.
All it is now.
They should they should definitely have people who go out of their way to find the most harsh but reasonable criticism and bring it to the team. versus everyone individually going out to get it. They should at least have that, because criticism is important. But also it is, it's the same thing where there's so much damage you can do if you just constantly bathe in online negativity.
That's also very
And
true.
that's a thing where there's a line where engaging with it healthily is there. Sometimes it's
I think
not
whenever
possible.
Alex Afrasabi said, no negativity in the dojo, that's
Yeah.
fucking wrong. But actually, too much negativity in the dojo and only focusing on the problems can create a form of paralysis. And
Yeah.
if you're paralyzed in your decision making because all you're doing is thinking in risk averse, how are things going to explode and go wrong terms? Kevin Jordan, who worked in Vanilla WoW, he streams as well. You'll see him on the podcast with the Theorycraft podcast that Chris Kalecki and others are on. It's a very good podcast. I enjoy it. I enjoy it greatly. What was he said? Was it love or fear knows no love?
Yeah.
So there are bits to that that are important. Should again note Josh and the community team, all thumbs up, great.
Yep.
Josh has always been super cool. Towards me and understanding and open and so this is just individual devs doing stuff on their private Twitters, which absolutely is their right and is not a form of a company statement. But also, if they do happen to be the devs who are partially running the community council, I'm also not going to be surprised if there's a causal relationship between these two events. But also, nor am I particularly offended at all.
Nope.
I don't mind. It would have been nice to make a Smurf alt account to spend some time, writing feedback and things. But I don't mind not having that there. It's not like we don't share our opinion anyway.
Yep. This is the best part. They can't ban us from our own YouTube channel.
Yeah. So look, there you go. If you, someone said if you didn't want the heat, you shouldn't have signed up for it. No, I've been blocked by, I was already new. I was blocked by a whole bunch of app devs before I made my application. It was just of like, well, if they let me in, I'll put in the work for them, absolutely. But if they don't, then hey, no bother. Which is how I actually think about it. So don't get angry about it in my behalf. I don't care.
Yeah,
it's no biggie. But yeah, I think the main bit of criticism that we would give on this, that from Ted here, bro, what the fuck are they thinking? Not making these WoW Council members anonymous in the forums? What a disaster! And people have already been sharing. One particular member of this forum who. I believe their intro post said something about their in-game experience.
Yes.
Not everybody agreed with their assertion of their own experience, and they were getting roasted on Twitter.
Yeah, their credentials didn't quite line up as to what they claimed on that character anyway.
Yeah, so that's just kind of what's going on there. And it's not ideal, because obviously we don't want to be creating massive heartache and strife. So I do think that they should lock that up a little bit, make them anonymous, because look, there's also a thing about anonymity. It does mean that an idea is just taken as it is.
Yep, absolutely.
No conception. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. If an idea just comes out and you don't really know who it's from, and you're just engaging with it as words and as a thought, then it could turn out it's someone that you would otherwise consider to be your enemy, somebody you don't like. But if you see a thing that they type, stripped of their name, stripped of knowing who it is, and you agree with it, then, maybe that's going to make you think, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's where
It's a very interesting thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's what's up with the community council. This was heavily called out by people. What people said would happen, unfortunately, is starting to happen. We obviously would say, look, if you disagree with somebody's opinion, do so respectfully. And I would say it's probably a decent idea. If you think, you're going to do a big zingy tweet that's going to go viral, try to limit harms, I suppose. So, yeah. There we go, community council. But hey, hopefully some good stuff comes of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you go on, yes, Darkness Seeker, we are aware of that email that they sent to staff. We will be covering it shortly.
Yeah?
Yep.
Bustin'.
Bastards.
Bustin'.
Busted makes them feel good.
Sure does. Brian Bustino.
Brian Bullitos.
Oh, dear.
Bullitos.
Yeah, so then next up we do have new PTR chapters, and
Yeah, we do.
these are PTR chapters that Blizzard wanted everybody to have seen that cinematic. They want people to see the cinematic before, and of course in this chat we all have seen the cinematic.
Yep.
So
And I'm just going to take this opportunity to say, please don't put your story in the PTR. Please don't do this to yourself. Thank you.
And you know what? I know, you could perhaps say that ourselves and say like Tally don't always agree on everything.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing we should do is try to find areas of common ground, build some bridges, and I think it's a good opportunity to say, we don't think the narrative should be on the PTR. He also doesn't think that the narrative should be in the PTR. There's loads of other creators who also don't think the narrative should be in the PTR. So I think this is a really good opportunity for the community to come together and to say, hey, Blizz, we think we would enjoy your story more if it wasn't on the PTR. This was put in the PTR with the intent of people playing it to get the story, because that's why they put the cinematic there.
Yeah.
Now, in fairness, they also put the cinematic there, as I said at the very start of the video that I did like 1 or 2 days ago. They probably put it there because without seeing that cinematic, some things maybe wouldn't make sense. And we'd see some zingy call-out tweets about it.
Yeah, I mean, they explicitly said that, I believe. Was it Taryn who said that, I think?
He did.
He explicitly said there was for context for PTR stuff.
He did, yes.
Yeah, so that's a case where if you have to show us cinematics months before your patch is out from the middle of the story because you want the PTR of context, maybe reconsider. It may be difficult having to spin up a narrativeless build of the game, especially if you do need your your chapter campaign quests tested, but definitely go out of your way to test those internally if possible, because it's going to do more harm. It's going to do more good than harm in the long term if you move this way. I think.
Yep.
I
I think some credit to Final Fantasy XIV has got to be given here, because that is a situation where a lot of people have really seen the light. Because as WoW people, we've just been used to how WoW does things, and we've been in our little bubble. And you just have to see the levels of excitement before a Final Fantasy XIV expansion or patch to see the value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thinking about Endwalker, there's so many things that if any text were data mined, if any models were data mined, there would have been massive spoilers immediately. If place names were data mined, there would be massive spoilers.
Yeah.
And that would have it wouldn't have completely ruined it because it stands alone. It's not like, well, if you know it, then it must be bad if you don't enjoy it anyway. But it's like a lot of the impact is taken away. A lot of their ability as storytellers is taken away by us knowing stuff ahead of time. And I think that's where the World of Warcraft team would benefit from massively. From us having to, from us doing chapter 5 without thinking about chapter 4 for 6 weeks before we do it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. So to go into it then, look, on Chapter 4, your sort of TLDR is that it opens with the Shattered Legacy cinematic, where Uther attempts to bond with Sylvanas over their shared fates caused by Arthas and Frostmourne, and this is a part of, therapist Uther basically being like, here, Sylvanas, listen, here's kind of what's happened to you. It happened to me. We both did terrible things. Yours are a lot worse than mine, though. But we've got to realize we did those things. We've got to move forward in a constructive way, because the best time to do the right thing was yesterday. The next best time is now. You can't travel back in time, this time at least, so you have to do the right thing now. Moving forward constructively. So that happens. We then come across some fragments of First One's technology, which have become attracted to an ancient translocator that seemingly leads to the entrance of the Sepulchre of the First Ones, which of course is the new raid instance. However, the fragments fail to fully attune with the beacon, leading us to the creation catalyst, wherein we fully empower them. And here's some, some screenshots of these things going on in these admittedly, pretty cool First Onesy environments, assembling outside the Sepulchre of the First Ones.
Yeah, there's Bolvar still hasn't done anything.
So now we're going to learn a little bit more. So Sylvanas says, if the jailer has breached the Sepulchre, then he's a breath away from enacting his plan. Bolvar, we cannot allow that to happen. Uther, tell the others what you told me. Sylvanas, you have all witnessed the jailer's power firsthand. Without the means to resist his domination, we have no chance against him. Anduin may be the key. If we can save him from, how dare you talk of freeing him after all you've done.
This is the amazing thing about having heard Lorna Bailey say so many things across so many different games. I actually heard that sentence in my head, and it's not even voiced yet.
Yeah. And of course, Jaina obviously is having a reaction to this, given Sylvanas.
Did some pretty bad stuff.
But Uther's coming in to say, hang on. Sylvanas held the Morn blade that bound him, so her presence might help us, free Anduin from the jailer's grasp.
Yep.
Jaina, I'll never trust her. Uther, then trust in me. Always Uther. Very well, we must prepare to enter the sepulchre and save Anduin together. Which, of course, it's quite nice to see Jaina and Uther together, obviously. Calling of Strathel.
Yep.
This time they are going in to save a slightly, not a prince anymore, I suppose. But they're going to go and save they want to save another young blonde man.
They want to save Arthas too. Slightly different this time.
Now next then,
Very
we've got the Crown of Wills.
Oh, God.
So, after reforging the key to the ancient translocator that leads us to the sepulchre, we clear our way through the raid up to Anduin. We free him from the jailer's grasp. And this is the neat thing where, versus patch 9.1, I will definitely appreciate here how Blizzard are tying basically the A-plot's one big A-plot, and the raid happens in the A-plot.
Yeah.
And, Final Fantasy XIV does that. And, it's intersperses its trials and things, right? And that's something we really appreciate in this game. So it's nice to see Blizzard, have a little go at that. So that's definitely good. So yes, we free him from the jailer's grasp. Then we go in search of a means to resist the jailer's domination with the aid of the Primus, who explains more about domination magic and how we may go about counteracting it. So I haven't read this yet. The hope, I suppose, is we begin to understand how these things work a little bit more. Field tests on various First One's constructs are carried out with the Helm of Domination, discovering that different types of automa can resist domination for varying degrees of time. Because of this, we surmise that due to the ever-changing and complex nature of the language of the First Ones, automa can resist the effects of domination for an extended amount of time. The more advanced in the knowledge of the language, the more resistant to domination magic it becomes. So, infusing the helm with the ciphers of the First Ones aids us in resisting domination.
I would love to have an explanation of physically how, because to me, that's really interesting, because you start to think about, Azeroth and the Oracle talking about the Oracle talking about Azeroth's song, and you start to think about how, musical stuff and musicality and singing speaks to, Era Luvatar. All of that, really, really deep magic stuff. Really interesting, but I hope we get told why.
Also, a movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, Arrival. Which is the whole thing with Arrival, it's based on a short story that's kind of based on a theory about how the language that you know and think in just kind of changes perceptions. Now, it's obviously taking it to a more science fiction-y level. With how the aliens in Arrival talk, where their language it's really interesting. It's it's a full circle, but that means quite a lot more. I highly recommend Arrival. It's one of my favorite movies from who is absolutely my favorite director, because he did Arrival, then he did Blade Runner, and then he did Dune.
For some reason in my head, I never connect him to Arrival. I don't know why.
You watched Arrival?
No, I have not.
Oh,
I really
for
should.
fuck's sake, man.
Really
Watch
should.
Arrival.
I will.
It's great. No, it's really brilliant.
Then he's a fucking incredible.
Oh,
director.
big Dennis Volavant.
Dennis Volavant, son boy, I tell you. Son boy.
Just so you understand, what we're doing here is taking the piss out of regional dialects in our own country.
Yep.
We do in fact know that he's not called Dennis Volavant.
Denis Villeneuve.
That's it.
Denis Villeneuve.
I'd like an artesian sourdough with a pint of Stella Artois.
Artesian.
Aye. I know people who do say Stella Artois.
Yeah.
And
only some of them said ironically.
oh yeah. No, but I do love the man who does pronounce it in that way. He's a good fellow indeed. Mm-hmm. Anyway. So, I bring up the movie Arrival, film Arrival, whatever, because there's a different connotation between the words film and movie. One of them sounds like more of a product.
Yes, you want a kinematic.
Whoa, that's it. The 2-hour-long cinematic.
Kinematic. Kinomatic, I guess. You want a pure, I don't know.
So I don't want to spoil that movie because it is one of the greats, and I highly recommend. But it is a movie. I'm trying to think of a succinct way to explain this darn thing without without spoiling things, I'll just say that language is deeply important to it in a way that's not just like, can you understand what the other being is saying? And then, so, you know, that's really fun from that like science fiction perspective, the conceit of that movie. And as you're saying, the Song of Creation, you know, you're thinking about Tolkien.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when it's, you know, the cipher of the first ones that goes into the big machinery and the thingy-bob, I mean, we don't exactly want to hear, you know, oh, yep, here's the accordion of Eru Iluvatar. He played a wee jig in this while he sung the universe into creation. You know, so maybe you get too technical in the song. So this is maybe a more hard sci-fi version of the Eru Iluvatar ideas.
Yeah.
To perhaps say.
Which is, I think, has a lot of potential to be very, very cool. To be fair, I am just kind of interested in symbology and the musicality and stuff, but yeah.
After seeing what you did in that Final Fantasy 14 video, analyzing the ASEAN sigils.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it wasn't me did the analysis.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, whoever that person was, I thought it was very cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we've worked out that this language of creation, which seems to be the language of the first ones, who I would not say created the universe. I would say they ordered it into a situation where the great dark beyond the material plane was formed into existence, roughly as is described from the perspective of the authors of Chronicle Volume 1. I think it's 1 that has the creation scene. But anyway. Infusing the helm with the ciphers of the first ones will aid us in resisting domination magic. You could say, you know, domination magic is very rooted in the power of the first ones. So by being able to imbue ourselves with that power, we can resist that magic.
Yeah, well, I mean, at a fundamental level, it's basically one step down logic, where if you assume origin magic is the strongest of all because it's so pure and so untainted by different variations, then, you know, almost anti-evolution. The Primus is a result of the first one, so his creation domination magic would be ranked lower. So you kind of go, oh, we're first one's magic wins. We were playing top trumps with magic here.
So, then we head to the Chamber of Reflection in Bastion, wherein other shards of the Helm of Domination are empowered by confronting our memories, the memories of those who endured and survived being dominated by the Helm, including Bolvar, Darien, Anduin, and Sylvanas. Nice. It's a really cool conceit, and in fairness, one of the cooler things about the patch 9.1, campaign is like, you know, those scenes.
Yeah.
You know, so that's cool.
Those characters and people and stuff.
Yeah. So then, with all the fragments of the Helm empowered, we return to the Rune Carver's chamber inside Torghast to reforge it into the Crown of Wills.
That's a pretty weak name.
It's a bit of a weak name, and it doesn't really look cool. It doesn't look super cool.
Yeah, I guess
But also, it's being compared to
the Helm of Domination.
The Helm of Domination, which, let's be real, is super fucking cool.
Yeah, I guess it's my problem is that the Crown of Wills doesn't just like Helm of Domination, Crown of Wills. The musicality was not there. The poetry was not there. It should have. I mean, I suppose they can't really call it much. They can't call it the Crown of Freedom because that's a bit on the nose. They can't call it the Crown of Emancipation because that's has like, you know, domination and slavery, kind of not quite the same thing in a couple of ways. So I'm gonna have to sit for a while and think what name they could have used.
The Crown of Big Future Good. So the Primus. Zoval needed to dominate the Autonoma to enter the Sepulchre, yet they did not succumb immediately. If we use the Helm of Domination, we may be able to discover the source of their resistance. Tell ya. Should we use it after all the devastation it's caused? Bolvar, if we can find a way to resist domination, it is worth the risk. The Primus. Domination is akin to communication, a language, if you will.
Interesting.
Now,
that's great.
You ever seen a movie? It's not Arrival. It's 2 movies after that director's, doing. The Voice in Dune.
Liberation. That's good. Yeah.
I watched Dune 1984 recently. Interesting way of doing the voice, I suppose. But I really love how Denis did it from the first person, perspective of Paul. I thought that was like such a cool scene. Fuck, I love that movie.
Yeah.
It's that thing, right, where the voice, and look, I'm not mega versed in the Dune lore, but it seems like the voice is just able to fucking speak at this fundamental resonance that somebody else cannot help but be sort of dominated in that way.
Oh, there's some other. I mean, I don't know if any of this is in token stuff because I'm not hugely read on that, but I can't believe I'm going to say this. Okay, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to sully myself by comparing it to this piece of shit. I was thinking of a book by a young person, movie I watched when I was like 10 and enjoyed. You might be able to pick it up. Rhymes with dragon. But the idea of...
Do you mean Eragon?
Yes, I mean Eragon Aragon. Yeah, because it had a lot of the stuff on true... It had...
Aragon! I watched Aragon last year. I watched Aragon, and holy fuck. Anyway, sorry, go on ahead.
Yeah,
Aragon, these nuts! Fuck, that's so funny! You bastard!
Oh God, these nuts. Yeah, so
well done,
yeah,
Donuts.
so the movie's not good. The book's not substantially better, but I remember because I read it when I was young, and it was where I first encountered the idea of the kind of true language of someone's true name, you can dominate them. You speak you speak the words of power, and power comes. It's the kind of one of those really fundamental things of symbology and names and stuff like that. So I really love that that's actually this way, because the idea of that being just this person speaking so strongly you can't help but resist is fucking
certainly fantastic. Some deep enough issues with those books. But I mean, it's sort of thing, we all kind of like really liked them at the time, and then maybe you grow. I remember reading Dance of Dragons, the Game of Thrones, and then moving to the final Aragon book, and it was really funny because the books were like similar size. Just in one of them, the words were like 3 times as big, which was just funny, but also that's young adult fiction, so I obviously, I'm not really dissing it on those grounds. Yeah. But it was kind of funny because the little bits whenever he hardened the magic system in Aragon were actually kind of neat.
That's why I actually liked it.
Jeremy Irons just filling up his gems.
I like that stuff.
And also it's like Jeremy Irons. There's a thing, Jeremy Irons and dragon movies. Yeah. He was in fact in the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Yeah. But anyway, so basically here in our team, we do think that all of this playing around with like fundamental words of creation, we think it's interesting. It's great. And it is something that has been very effective in multiple works of science fiction and fantasy. Somebody also said, of course, Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea, also true.
I mean, I think it's obviously fucking priests, power word spells, fuck's sake. Anyway, yes, it's that stuff is so fundamental that I think when you go back to like, for your concepts, you go back to really deep fundamental truths that like, you can almost in genetic memory, you can feel them. That's how deep they go back. Stuff like that. I really love that stuff.
So, domination is akin to communication, a language, if you will. One so powerful that it interferes with a creature's very understanding of itself. That's why it's almost impossible to resist. If you're being like manipulated by like the language creation was sung into existence with, I mean, if we can disrupt the interference for long enough, though, we may be able to thwart it. So then we infuse it. We do so in this like really cool looking sort of, it's like a mixture of, your AQs, your bronze dragon shrine. It's a pretty neat looking area.
So you mean it's sandy?
It's sandy. That's what I mean. You boil it down to its bare essentials, sand. Then of course we get this, Talia scene. Yeah. So, here's one. This phrase doesn't make sense, does it? Just looking at it makes my head spin. Bolvar, that feeling in your mind is the quality that makes domination less effective. And then, a bit of a conversation. Who taught you to wield a hammer? Sir Crestfall of Cultras. He was always there for me growing up. Someone I could look up to in the flesh. You were there alone in Icecrown. Did you ever think of Mother and me every day? And there's more scenes there between those two characters. And I would say, they're nicely written, nicely acted. It's good. I want more of Talia in the game. I think one of the issues with Shadowlands is it's had sort of like so many characters that, the likes of Talia, it's like at least Flynn got a book, but we would have rather had more of in-game Flynn. So I'm glad that she's sort of in this journey with us, and it would be nice if we got a little bit more of her.
Oh man, this is stuff where I actually like where this is going, and like the way I can think about this stuff clearly is like, why did Bolvar know that about domination magic? How was he able to resist it? Is there something he knows about this stuff? Is that something to do with the dragon fire?
I believe canonically,
it
is it's the dragon fire and like the life in him, because life is pretty good at wrestling death.
Yeah. So, but life didn't resist death; it resisted domination. Now we're thinking about it this way.
But this domination
So-
magic isn't the language of creation.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see the parallels. I'm
Yeah,
trying to draw
yeah.
here. Where is there something to do with? Do the dragons have some sort of deep feeling of this, and that was passed to him through that somehow? I don't know. Just thinking of cool things I could say, basically.
Yeah. Then, of course, there was the, as we said in the title of the clip that came out about these lines, the ones that set the internet on fire, as people thought that this was about Zoval at the time we said, like, this is almost certainly Arthas, and it is.
Yep.
This is Sylvanas' that's from our man Lace, good man himself.
I'm gonna leave you for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Back for shortly.
I will do the same upon your return. So, yeah, you know, that's what it is. That is Sylvanas going over her own memories. Not about Zoval. And, of course, we got the reforging of the Helm, where, all this happens, and it turns into the Crown of Wills, which, honestly, doesn't really look as cool. That said, it's hard to look cooler than the Helm of Domination, right? That's like a pretty iconic thing. So there we go. We get this scene with the Primus. It is time to remake what has been broken. What is to stop this new helm from being used to enslave others, says Thrall. Which Primus says, it is to become something greater, an instrument of free will. Sylvanas, never again will a Lich King reign in Ice Crown. So, the whole line, there must always be a Lich King? No longer. So, I don't know if this means that we're going to find housing for all the Scourge that are rampaging around Azeroth right now. Because, again, we were kind of warned, if there's no Lich King sitting in the throne, the Scourge are going to run rampant. And we sort of saw some of that happen at the start of this expansion. But, I mean, what's going on? I would like to see some more of that, I think. Jeb Bolvar saying that with this reforging, our wills are our own. Talia for the future. Bane for the Shadowlands. I feel like... hey... I shouldn't complain. Bane has said something. That's more than we've been used to this expansion. Jaina for Azeroth. The Primus. This will be the end of Zoval. All we need to defeat Zoval is a new helmet.
Oh, fuck. Should have known that a while ago.
That's it.
Would have been awful
Imbued
handy.
with the strength of those who defy domination, that which sought to bind us will be made anew. Behold the Crown of Wills. So I guess the Crown of Wills is just kind of like our big domination protector helm.
Yeah, Liberation would have been a way cooler name.
I see, yeah.
Yep.
So there you go. There's no longer going to be a Lich King after all this, which does mean Bolvar's sort of Mr. Crispy's got a job open.
He's going to go back to this family.
I wonder what he's going to do. I mean, Talia's going to be like, fucking hell, Dad, you need some E45 cream. Your skin's a wee bit dry there. See a dermatologist. What do we do with him?
Christ, yeah.
Well, what do we do with Mr. Crispy? That's my thought. What goes on with Bolvar afterwards? Or, is he just kind of like in the... Does he go to the waiting room with Magni and Khadgar as like the expansion Oracle Lounge?
Oh,
where,
yeah.
Him, Magni, and Khadgar are just going to
chilling,
hang out
like-
when they're not being used by the plot.
Yeah. Does Rathion show up there every now and again? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Rathion shows up to like play pranks on them.
Yeah.
Of course, we got our Bolvar Talia conversation, which, you know what? I'm not going to read those out because this is
Yeah.
more of the nice character work, and I
Yep.
feel like the voice actors are doing that. So there we go.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. As far as this goes with the setup of the Shadowlands, I don't really think we could hope for better.
Yeah.
It's solid enough. It's a solid enough seeming final chapter in a story that I haven't particularly resonated with personally, and I know many others feel the same. I will say there are some nice character moments, like with Talia and all of that, and one of the reasons I will say, and this is, again, Blizzard, please pay heed, one of the reasons why that scene with Talia is better is because I went around Borealis with her.
Yeah.
And that's why these characters like Talia honestly replace Jaina, replace Thrall. Let Jaina and Thrall be these larger-than-life figureheads. Yeah. Sometimes literally larger-than-life because they're portrayed at like 3x scale for readability issues.
Yeah.
And let's have these characters like Talia and Flynn and Matthias Shaw, those characters. Because frankly, whenever they do those little moments with characters that have been established always within World of Warcraft, they've been nice. Like Thalystra's had some nice moments, and Talia's had nice moments, and Flynn's had nice moments. Runas, remember, everyone really enjoyed that. They can actually do a solid enough job when they just tell a nice wee story inside quests and establish characters like Talia. I think the problem is that all these faction leader bozos come in and just muscle, we are the big names of the Warcraft lore. We are inherently cool, therefore you will clap for us. Yeah. And to a degree, that's sometimes kind of true.
Yeah, well,
see Varian, you're like, cool.
Yeah, but that's the problem. It's, it's overexposure, where if you think they're cool and you hang out with them, Bane should be cool. Bane sat scratching his hole in Oribos doing sweet fuck all. His only role in the expansion is to go, maybe Sylvanas shouldn't be, or should be couple. That stuff. Where otherwise, if they just showed up for like 5 minutes and sorted something major out, then we'd be like, oh, thank fuck they're here. Yeah. Thank the Lord they have arrived in time to help us at this critical moment, but we'll only see them for 5 minutes. Which would fit worse in this category, because if we're working with world-ending skill, we'd be pissed off if the greatest characters in Warcraft history weren't there to help us. But if we were just solving like the Defias problem, and then we just saw like, at the end of it, Varian has to come and sort some shit out, and obviously this literally wouldn't line up, but in an alternate universe where Varian showed up and fought off Edwin while we sorted out some mooks, that would feel cool. Because it's like, oh, we have helped all this unfold. We understand, we've experienced this from both sides, but ultimately we're just kind of bit characters in all of it, but we get to see it unfold.
Yeah.
And then we would have a game all about Varian being Logosh and stuff, or we'll have a book, but we would have a game in this ideal world that I'm trying to build. And that would be a really cool way for them, just, oh, here we're going to use these sparingly because they're very, very potent characters. We're not going to have you watch the idle animations for 18, 24 months.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now then, Mage Tower. To be real, I haven't done any of it yet. I haven't done any of it yet because I've been busy with Endwalker, and I was stuck in Endwalker queue. Halo Infinite came out. Frankly, I've been playing WoW and Halo for essentially similar amounts of time.
Yeah.
Technically, maybe Halo for longer. I mean, obviously, my game time is way skewed towards World of Warcraft here. But, Halo Infinite campaign was out. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go see what it's like. And I had a blast, by the way. It was very fun. Grapple hooks.
Yep.
They were good in Stormheim.
There's
good in Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
Fucking saving video games, these grapple hooks.
Honestly, right. So I need to get the actual wording of it, but a friend of mine from uni has a saying. It's called Neil's Law, and any game in existence would be improved by the inclusion of a grappling hook. And so far, he has not been wrong. Any game that's went, we will incorporate a grappling hook, has been massively improved. Just Cause, Halo Infinite, Doom Eternal, Stormheim even.
Yeah.
Anything else?
The Maw.
World of Warcraft, technically, because Outlaw Rogues.
Oh, true.
Their grappling hooks pretty cool.
Make everything better. They're great.
Yeah, grappling hooks. So there you go, game designers. Grappling hooks, make them useful. Fantastic.
How do we put a grappling hook in the Pale Beyond?
Well, here's the problem. A lot of that boils down to it being action gameplay. We're using it properly, but you could just have a grappling hook being
as a mini game.
It could just be an item, yeah. Just a grappling hook item that you'll use to hold bits of ice together.
Sweet. I'll let Thomas know we need grappling hooks stat.
Yeah. No, I mean hook shot. Yeah, hook shot from. I almost forgot the name of the Zelda series for a second there. The hook shot. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
So.
Oh yeah, Survival Hunter as well. I forgot.
Yeah, of course. So the Mage Tower.
Yep.
Is the Pale Beyond available to play? No, we're still making it.
Yes, it is, but only for people in this office.
Oh yeah, I've played it. No, it's actually on my Steam account.
Oh yeah,
because of how all that works with
Yeah.
beta access and everything.
Yeah.
So I have a copy of it in Steam, but you guys can't yet. Sorry.
Yep.
You wouldn't want to. It's not done yet.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
But hey, if you do, wishlist our game on Steam. Woo!
Yep.
But yeah, the Mage Tower then. So I haven't done any of it because I've been, I've been doing other things.
You've been doing other things.
As I, in my popular and high-rated tweet, said, "Hello everyone, can we have?"
I said hello Warcraft devs, but yes.
I'm on the wrong Twitter account. You know what? Never mind. That's the wrong website. There's the news. I basically just tweeted at Warcraft devs, "Hey, can we extend the Mage Tower? This is coming up to the holidays."
Also,
and a lot of people are really, and Endwalker, a lot of people, of course, are really busy, aren't we? You know, we're busy because, as an example, we're closing on the 23rd through to the 29th, right?
Oh, prime Endwalker.
Oh, big Endwalker. Yeah, so, you know, we're closing, and I would like there to be some content in the bank so that when we're not open, because, you know, breaks are good, we have some content for you guys. And that means doing a bunch of work to make sure that there's content up over the break period.
More work to less work.
Yeah, and of course, in most jobs, it's a bit like that. You have to tie off all your things before the holidays, and this is also basically the worst time they could have opened up this feature with FOMO, frankly. Yeah. And I think a lot of people seem to agree with my tweet. A lot of people also saying just have it open forever. And yeah, look, it's Boxing Day, and there's, you know, not much to do but relax. It would be perhaps nice to add in some Mage Tower, but that won't be possible, it seems. That's some pity. It's a shame.
Yep, absolutely.
You have done it.
Yes, I have done I've done a very, very small amount of Mage Tower, and I've only done it because I've been in queue for Endwalker, which, you know, thankfully my PC can handle having both of those open at the same time. But I've been trying the Elemental Shaman, because if I log in my Paladin, I'll just scream. So I have it Elemental Shaman at 60. I've been trying that for maybe about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours total, to no avail because it's fucking hard. I also went to try the rest of Shaman one and went, I'm not doing this on anything but my Paladin because Paladin's strong, I guess is the way I'd put that. It's substantially going to be substantially easier, but man, it's so hard. Like, I remember doing Mage Tower when it was relatively new and thinking, this is also extremely hard, but it feels like it's a little bit overtuned. And I did quite a lot of Mage Tower, but I did it around 7 point, sort of later in 7.2. I wasn't fully like Antorus geared up, but I had a decent bit of gears, maybe a little bit later. But it's just way too hard for the average person, and not in a way that's satisfying. I think that's the problem I find. Well, obviously, I think some of them from the last time I did them are really, really fucking cool. Like the fact that you have all of these tools to get over the Archmage Xylem one, where you can Death Grip him as a Frost DK, or you can double jump over the lasers as a Demon Hunter. That stuff's really cool, and I really like a lot of the flavor of the challenge. But Agatha, for example, is like, the timers feel off to me, and they're problems for you to solve by manipulating your behavior instead of executing correctly. Because the point of Agatha is you need to get, there are a bunch of ads you need to deal with as priority. So she summons imp servants that walk up and start healing her through these channel casts. So you can slow them or stun them or find some way to displace them to interrupt their cast while you kill them. Then there are Smoldering Imps and Umbral Imps she summons at the same time. Umbral keep her invincible while they're alive, so you can't split AoE on her or focus on her shield. And the Smoldering Imps fire high damaging fireballs at you. They really hurt a lot more than I remember. Absolutely, the Smoldering Imps. And I did Agatha on, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 different characters back in the day. But they hurt a lot more than I'm used to, or that I remember. But it's about damage profile. And it's really, really interesting. Like, as an example, Stormkeeper for Elemental Shaman. We have that as a talent, which means we get the same one we had, slightly different flavor, slightly different effects and stuff, or weaker effects, but it feels designed around Elemental Shaman and Legion, and it's definitely different in damage profile now, difference in usability, not massively different, not like huge, gigantic difference, but it is different, and it feels way worse to me. Like, I guess in my head, especially after I've been playing so much FF, I'm like, everything just kind of lines up in my head
Yeah.
for stuff. Whereas I'm like, why are these imps spawning when I have no AoE tools available? Because I don't have the Maelstrom bar to efficiently damage while also holding Earthquake for imp spawns. I don't always have Stormkeeper as it comes up. There's all these little weird things where it's like it feels off to me, but it is also really quite fun. And I think that's the one part. The fact that they've scaled it down, the fact that gear sort of matters is a topic for maybe sort of a topic I'll not talk about right now, but they're so close. If they can make it a little bit more tuned, and I guess there's a problem with PTR having not enough time to completely get it right, as well as not having it up for tuning as much in the mid-star or on the PTR, but man, it's so close to being this great experience. But I think they just haven't done quite enough yet. That said, if queues are pretty bad in Endwalker tonight, which is likely will be in Friday night, I'll likely do a wave of them on other classes. I was about to say jobs. Other classes so I can get a better experience. And I definitely will be doing the Prop Paladin one because I did it in 7.2 and I'm fucking going to do it again.
Need that gear set?
No, I need to know that it wasn't a fluke the last time I did it. Because I spent fucking hours doing Prop Paladin the first time. That was a nightmare, and I think like that was me at the peak of my World of Warcraft gameplay. I was untouchable after I had done. I was like, I have become Prop Paladin. Like, I have become Prop Paladin. So I really want to do it again. I need to do it again, but man, it's such a good bit of content. But it's just not perfect.
I was such a chump. I was like in it. I was in it like a bit of a funk.
Yeah.
Whenever that patch came out, and then, I kind of properly jumped back in playing the monk.
Yeah.
So I got around to doing on Windwalker monk. It's a load of piss.
Oh yeah.
The Windwalker, yeah. So I wanna do the Hunter one, and I actually do have one of every single class at least Legion.
Yeah. Well,
because I did
skills
that
you to
during
45. So.
Legion. Yeah, so I'm trying to wonder, like, will my Legion characters be fine? Because if I can log into my Horde characters, I have one of every class, pretty much. Yep. Legion Horde. Mm-hmm. Legion level Horde. And if I can just hop in there, I want to get that flail, man. Is it the warrior flail, or is it the one where you get a flail? Wait, no, you can't get the weapons.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck
I've actually lost my...
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You sort of missed that opportunity.
Yeah, I missed that opportunity. Well, I want to do the thing and think, if I did that a few years ago, I would have got the flail. But I want the gear sets; they're nice.
Yeah, no, the gear sets are definitely nice. I think it's interesting because there's a lot of things I don't want to say authoritatively because people might, not say people might disagree, but it's a subjective feeling where I feel like too much of it's designed around you having to hold your cooldowns and hold your timings and all that stuff. Versus use your whole toolkit to your advantage, which maybe is a problem more of the Agatha one. I need to try the Red Paladin one, see how that feels against. Oh my god, what's her name? Was it the Valkyrie Silgrim? Whatever it was that fight in the Halls of Valor, that was interesting. What's the other one? Well, I want to do the healer one, but trying that on Resto Shaman, it feels insane. I remember that was hard back in the day. But I remember having a lot more tools to deal with it, and I feel like there's a design problem where I feel like it's a puzzle to solve for players as opposed to an execution matter. Some of them are execution matters, like I think a lot of the Xylem stuff is execution based. Agatha is a little bit more. Oh well, if you literally do not have the damage here.
Yeah.
You are not able to kill these things fast enough, and it's because you don't have resources at this time because you've been playing optimally, and like that kind of stings to me a little bit. You could maybe get around to that by giving like 2 charges of Stormkeeper or a bigger Maelstrom bar or something, but then that's a specific thing. So I guess it's a matter of they need to think about that. I'd like to see them take another stab at the Mage Tower instead of just giving it to us again, or rather, in addition to giving it to us again.
Yeah, and I really hope that they will.
Yeah.
Because, there's obviously going to be, quirks.
Yeah.
Kind of taking something that had to be pretty tightly done back then and then taking it to now, even though the designs of classes have changed.
Yeah, we were thinking about Marksman Hunter earlier, marksmanship
Exactly.
hunter earlier on. Like, it's like, what's that? You need to move? Yeah, fuck you.
Bit different to how it was in Legion.
Yeah.
There's a super message from Andrew who said, I better be getting a whole load of lore walking podcasts for Christmas, lads. Cheers. That is actually in the plan.
Yep.
We've had, honestly, we've just had a bunch of issues the last while. I mean, some of them are down to me personally, and that is things I shall share once they are resolved. No form of drama or like anything internally. It's actually it's just been a really hard time, frankly.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will get to that.
Man, indeed. Yeah, so I honestly recommend you go try Mage Tower in as many classes as you try, because they're very good for training you. That's why I think they worked so beautifully, because I went into Legion, did them all, got all the class mounts, did a lot of the Mage Towers. I'm like, this is it. This is content this game needs. It needs a curve up into it, but if you can beat the Mage Tower, and even if you read guides on how to do the Mage Tower, you're like, oh well, you're kind of cheating a little bit maybe, but it'll learn. Oh yeah. Oh, I never thought to use X ability in Y situation. That's how it's used. I'll do it in future for dungeons. Stuff like that.
How many people were better warlocks after the warlock class quest bit at the end?
Oh yeah.
Forced you to use your toolkit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Of course,
that's the stuff that's
for
fantastic,
for the rewards of this. Actually, no. First, there is the thing tuning. Blizzard are, I think, looking at things. They might be tuning a few. Tuning a few down. There's the sort of thing, like, I know you can sort of joke, yep, just like it was in Legion, people crying for nerfs. At the end of the day, though, this is them doing it like with a form of scaling. They're obviously going to have targets of success rates and difficulty. And, if they've missed the mark in their targets, fair enough, tune it.
Which I will say that I think that's acceptable as like a kind of as metric driven way to look at it, but that also feels a little bit weird to me. Like, oh, well, there's not enough people doing so we'll tune it down. You're like, well, I don't know.
Well, as long as they're being smart about how they read the numbers. Like if they can clearly see everyone's like, whoa, this one's really hard. Like, was it Tattles? It was one of the gameplay boys who's very well respected for the gameplay. It was like, yeah, this one's probably a bit too hard. So it's like, if the real subject matter experts there are saying that sort of thing, more than happy to defer to their experience.
Yeah.
For what the sets look like, I mean, I'll just quickly go through them. They are pretty damn nice. That was a really, I think, a really pretty damn cool tier. Of course, that is a tier that was riffing off Burning Crusade gear. I mean, not for Monk. Didn't exist in Burning Crusade. Oh, man. Cool Paladin set. Very cool Priest set. So maybe a bit less than the Rogue. There's a Rogue set.
There's Shaman that's green for some reason.
And then there's the Warriors. So I think they're pretty cool. And of course, Druids can get the Fell Werebear. Which, it's not the Werebear that you maybe really want, but hey, it is a Werebear skin that you can have. And then, if you do all 7 challenges, you will get a mount. And, it's a pretty cool mount.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah. Sweet. Hey, more of this the merrier. I just say, hey, Blizz, open her up.
Yeah.
More than just 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I think if actually, I'd like to know what people think about this. So I would say, yeah, no worries. I would say that the Mage Tower needs specifically 2 major things, I think. Number 1 is, of course, open it up. Maybe not all the time if you really like the idea of FOMO and like you want to cycle time walking, but definitely make it a lot more regular, because it's like I said in response to Michael's tweet about it all, FOMO only works if you're the market leader. FOMO is going to bite back fiercely whenever you actually get it wrong, or whenever you're number 2 in people's heads, which will happen with a lot of people for Endwalker, but it'll also happen an awful lot over Christmas, over the time of year, where it's like, well, especially like, I can't remember who it was, but someone said earlier that, it was aka Mad Max, to try Mage Tower I would have to pay Blizzard money, and that's not happening. That's completely fair. Maybe you don't want to sub now to play it, so they're just going, well, no, fuck you, I'm not gonna pay you. So that's just unfair, especially about the Christmas, versus, hey, this will be up whenever you want to come back. That's the attitude I think they need to take, more or less, is we will make the game and it'll be ready for you, because otherwise they're going to lose out on the FOMO stuff. At least I hope so. I really would like to see us get the numbers behind it, but we never will. If we are to hear anything about numbers, I would expect it would go something like, let me think. In their earnings call, it would go something along the lines of, we have seen thanks to new initiatives in they wouldn't say reusing old content. Let's think. Thanks to new initiatives in creative use of content, World of Warcraft engagement in Q4 2021 was at a record for that quarter in a non-modern expansion year. That's something I actually imagined they would say. But we're not going to get anything more than that. And the other point is the gear scaling. This is what I'd actually like to know what you think. Because the gear scaling, I feel it's like, that's always been a part of World of Warcraft gameplay. Going and getting the gear you want. Or getting the gear that's optimal for a situation. There's strategy involved, there's time involved, there's gameplay involved. But when that comes down to almost the you have to check a guide because you need to know the mathematics behind it because of scaling. Like, I know the best move is to go get a bunch of TBC dungeon gear with sockets for every piece, and I think for most specs you want to look for versatility, and then I guess it depends on everything else after that. But that's the kind of thing that's a lot of time for a FOMO thing to go on, but also it feels degenerate. It feels like, oh, well, this is going out of the way. This is not intended for us to go and get all these gems, get all these different consumables from different eras, as opposed to just the modern ones. So I think, I would rather the scaling was a stat template. Just, this is your stats. You don't have access to trinket effects, or maybe there's a hard set trinket effect. You have to play it with this completely solid set of, this is you, this is your challenge, deal with it. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but that's definitely something I would like to see.
Oh, bad news. It is no nut December.
Out of nuts.
Out of nuts.
Yep.
Wanted a tasty bite of some nuts, and don't have any.
Yep, no, well, yeah.
Well, I went to find some nuts and a Pepsi. Of course, I ended up finding neither.
Yep.
What do I walk past?
What?
Tin of Heroes.
Yeah.
Big biscuit selection.
Yep.
And of course, I'm not in keto, but I am on low carb, and I'm trying to have under 75 grams of carbs a day. So those things are a big no-go, and I'm completely off alcohol. So
fun Christmas.
none of the beer that our fridge has is left over from the Christmas party is drinkable. So yeah, honestly, that was a rather doomed enterprise.
That's interesting. I think, well, not that many responses yet, but I see people say that either time walking set that's optimal for mage tar, or stat template is a good idea. So that's something I think they should maybe consider in future. Even though there is valid gameplay in going to farm old sets, it feels a bit too broken. They could make content to get a time walking set, or time walking set's actually a good idea, by the way. They should do that.
That'll be fun.
Yep.
Mythic Plus.
Yep.
I've got to say, I feel like I'm coming back for hopefully for 9.2. Hopefully maybe do some of the raid with the guild, but I'm just not really interested in doing the Mythic Plus, just in the face of there being other games to play.
Yeah.
So that's me on the Mythic Plus. I don't know how people found it.
I honestly haven't seen anyone talk about it, although I think people will like it because it's novel. As long as it doesn't end up being, it's easier, so we'll do that this week, or for the next 2 weeks, or it's harder, so we won't do that. I guess that's kind of one of the problems I think they'd likely run into. But it's not a problem they should be paying attention to. They should ignore player behavior they don't want and try to incentivize out of it instead of designing out of it, I think.
So there's that. Then of course there's the whole hood thing. Looked like a certain shall we say clan. Blizzard's response to the criticism has basically been to change the back of the hood to no longer represent that particular group. However, I think for a lot of people it's like, yeah, cool. Well, now it no longer looks like a foot soldier. Maybe just looks like the Grand Warlock or Cyclops or other silly names they have. You've
just adorned the hood. You haven't changed the fundamental problem, which was the pointy big top
I
bit
think it was,
and the color, which is
More silhouette.
Yeah.
Exactly.
which is unfortunate because I actually think like if it had shipped like the new one, I think people wouldn't have drawn that comparison quite as quick, or it wouldn't have been quite as obvious and loud, which is very annoying.
The conversation has certainly been rooted in the the initial here, so
Yeah.
I imagine there'll be another round of changes
Yeah.
to that. Frankly,
Yeah, and I can see it looks to me like these changes were just, well, we don't want to change the silhouette or remodel it. We can add detail and get away.
you can see why. Like, look at the flow. It's quite a nice flow to the
Yeah,
side when you look at it, from the front.
It is gorgeous. Like,
So yeah, they're probably going to be working on that. Then also nice little thing, loads of puzzles and mini games. What mini games in Zareth Mortis? Yeah, hey, I like these. My next favorite thing is watching Mythic Raiders completely fail at them.
oh my god, the one Twitch clip of Lorgok doing the ley lines puzzle fucking ended me. Like,
Oh yeah,
man.
but yeah. So there's one of these where you have 100 squares and 20 runes, 10 each row, 10 each column. Clicking one side of the runes will turn on or off all squares adjacent to the runes line or column. The objective is to turn off all the squares. So there you go. You have to finish the puzzle within 7 moves.
God.
Some people will have fun with the puzzle. Others will get an add-on.
Yep. So I'm going to be brutally honest, right? See the other ones, the Bejeweled and the Ley Lines. I think those are fun. I don't know why it is. I've never sat down and learned the pattern to these protolocks, like, what they are.
Same, yeah.
I've never learned them, so I'm like, oh, fuck, this is going to be brutal for me. But, well. So
All that. We've got the...
Yeah, the single version, which is the one you get all the cardinals around it all swap, which fucks me up every time.
We've got this one, where it looks like the hardest of the puzzles at first glance, but it's quite easy to solve if you know what to do. There are 9 runes on the panel, each rune with 4 different characteristics. Shape, or core shape, number of core shapes, border shape, number of border shapes. You need to pair the runes in this puzzle in groups of 3. Each group needs to either have a characteristic that matches between all 3 of them, or none between all 4 of their characteristics.
Nice. I like a little pattern recognition.
Yep. We have got Bejeweled.
Yep.
Good. Love Bejeweled. We have got the lines.
Yep.
Good.
Love the lines.
Good. Love the lines. There you
Yeah.
go. Hey, I think these things are more fun. Put them in.
Yeah.
And hey, guess what? If people don't like them, they'll just install an add-on anyway.
Also, I think one thing that I'll notice is the fact that they're done against the backdrop instead of against the world is a massive UX improvement. Because the amount of times your camera would shit the bed when you're trying to do the ley lines, or you would just have like someone stand on top of you so you can't see. So that's a nice improvement.
Yeah, so I think that's all pretty sweet. Then another nice thing. Hey, look, feedback. What do we want it to be acted on? And here it has. Zareth Mortis campaign skip for alts. You'll be able to skip the first 3 chapters of the Zareth Mortis campaign on alts if you have done at least once before in one of your characters. You just talk to Talinara by the Orbos Enclave. Skipping the first 3 chapters will give you access to the Zareth Mortis zone, the initial part of the Cypher, the first one system, and the Pokopok zone companion. We do not know whether these first 3 chapters will be available on launch, but due to the introductory nature of them, we do imagine they're day one. Yeah, they're day one. Almost certainly day one.
Sweet.
So, hey, there's skips being put in from the start. Look, a lot of people are going to say, oh, don't care about 9.2 though. Fair enough. But what if the next expansion has a theme that you do like, and all of these lessons are carried forward into that expansion?
Yep.
That would be good. That's the main point.
Yep.
Also, by the way, new soul shapes for the Night Fae. That's pretty cool. All I'll say is, let me be a penguin and Azeroth, please. Let's keep them. How do we keep them? How do you keep them and then balance that? I am not really sure.
You probably don't, honestly speaking.
Yeah, fuck it. Just leave it in the game.
Put it into the general tab for anyone who has done a specific way to unlock it. So you get a quest to access it. That maybe there's some, because obviously with the way Kyrians have links to the Shadowlands and stuff, they can come back out and pick us up. Have some link to the Night Fae somewhere in Val Shiraz, because the Emerald Dream's close. Talk to an NPC, do a quest, unlock it, goes in your general tab, only usable in...
Yes, that's important.
Only usable in rested zones.
Yeah, great. Because I think we want that flavor, but we all understand that you can't just give everyone in the game a blink forever.
Yep.
So I think that's a good way to deal with it. Okay, speaking of dealing with things...
How do you deal with your employees wanting improvements?
So today we have got union busting, breast milk, and more.
Fuck me.
Okay, so employees moving towards unionization and going on strike. That's the situation. So there's a strike fund on GoFundMe. This is basically so that people are able to strike without, as much of a financial issue. And $250,000 odd has been there. Damn, Rowan.
10,000.
10K. Holy shit.
Nice.
So there's that going on, right? A strike fund to basically support people being able to strike. So there you go. And it's doing incredibly well. After just the first day, it's received now $250. So I think a fair few people are going to feel like, all right, well, provided the organizers, of course, handle this extremely large sum of money in a responsible fashion, that should allow for more strikes to happen. And it's the sort of thing, somebody can be on a salary that in our part of the world would be really incredible.
Yep.
But in California, be living paycheck to paycheck. And that's just cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's the calls for unionization.
Yep.
Where, want to start a union, collective bargaining, all those things, right? And how are these calls for unionization went, Matt?
So they've gone as well as one might expect, which is to say everyone's like, you know what? Given the state of the industry, unionization might be a good move. And Activision Blizzard are realizing just how fucked they might be and have responded in kind.
Yeah.
Love a wee bit of union busting.
Yep. So there you go. Bustin'.
Yep. Brian Bulletow was sent an email saying,
Of course, for Brian, it's a little bit more dramatic because he served in a rather controversial government.
Yeah.
Is he the one with? Did he have an intelligence community background, and then he ended up in the Trump administration?
Yeah, he's the one who was called Trump's attack dog, wasn't he?
He was called Trump's attack dog by people.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So before you read it, let me read out what Imran Khan from is he Game Informer?
I don't know. I think he's Game Informer now. He's changed outlets.
He was Game Informer. He's now Fanbyte. Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Yes. So he said, "Damn, they can't even union bust subtly. You see all these movies about companies being super villainy in really overt ways. You're like, no. In real life, they have to be way more subtle. But it turns out the movies are the subtle versions, and actual American businesses are run by idiots." So that's his opinion.
Yeah. That's it. So Brian, then.
Yeah.
We're not getting into politics. All that I would say is I think quite obviously the staff of Blizzard Entertainment, they probably did not vote red.
No.
And you could probably then say that they do not feel particularly represented by this individual in leadership. I think that's a relatively uncontroversial statement. Indeed. Again, I must double say, we are not in America.
Nope.
We are not Americans.
Yep.
Do not vote in your politics. So I think if people love, I just say that because sometimes people really love overreading into a statement and then coming up with, this is what they clearly think.
Yeah.
So, we're fucking out of this shit, other than the bloody obvious that, the bloody obvious that this is certainly a man who was in an administration that a lot of the Blizzard staff are really going to quite hate.
Generally speaking, we don't have many strong opinions on any of these things unless they're specifically related to the game. Or someone being a bastard.
Yep. If your erection persists after 4 hours, consult your doctor. Okay, yeah. So at Activision Blizzard, we are working hard to create a. Yes, look. If you want us to take the piss out of Boris Johnson not knowing a Christmas party was going on in his own house, we'll do that.
Yep.
But yeah, so everyone at Activision Blizzard are working hard to create a more inclusive, supportive, and rewarding environment. And thanks to your input, we're making progress. In the past few months, we've converted nearly 500 temp workers to full-time employees at Activision Publishing Studios.
Good.
We've increased wages for a large portion of temporary workers and added paid time off benefits, zero tolerance harassment policy, and waived arbitration of sexual harassment and discrimination claims, significant commitments to increase gender diversity, and are dedicating a $250 million fund to accelerate opportunities for diverse talent across the industry. We have lots more to do and believe the dialogue between management and employees is essential for the success of Activision Blizzard. As you may have seen yesterday, there was a communication supported by the Communication Workers of America that asked employees to sign and submit. I will never serve, said Sylvanus.
Never submit. Yeah.
To sign and submit union authorization cards. I want to be clear about this. The leadership of Activision Blizzard supports your right under the National Labor Relations Act to make your own decision about whether or not to join a union.
It's in bold, so you know they mean it.
So, if we're to pretend the rest of this document doesn't exist,
Yeah, sound.
it's like, yep, sound enough,
Fantastic.
fair enough.
Yeah, we know all that. You don't need to say it all again, but sure.
We now need to continue with the rest of the document, though.
Oh, boy.
As you make this decision for your future, something people are, generally pretty interested in their future,
Most decisions involve the future.
we ask only that you take the time to consider the consequences of your signature on the binding legal document presented to you by the CWA. Consider your future binding legal document. Once you sign that document, you have signed over to the union the exclusive right to represent you for the purposes of collective bargaining concerning all terms and conditions of employment. That means that your ability to negotiate all your own working conditions will be turned over to CWA, just as the document says. So, that's a little bit threatening. I have to be real, though. I do not know exactly how these things work. And when it comes to unions, I know of the very obvious pros of a union, and then also some of the cons that people would bring up, of unions. There's, of course, many sides to everything. But the important thing is that employees are able to make their own decision on this sort of thing. And when perhaps they read something like this with language as you make this decision for your future, you could maybe feel a little bit threatened.
Yeah, okay, so I would say that this is not really threatening in any capacity, because obviously it's illegal to threaten people not to join the union.
It's illegal.
Yeah, but what this is doing,
close.
what this is very much doing is going, oh, you wouldn't want to sign that. That's very dangerous. That's very scary.
A rescue maneuver.
That's legally binding. You wouldn't want to have your future in someone else's hands, would you?
Alina
be very interesting.
Goya here says, that's not how unions work, Lamau. I'm a union leader for my company. Well, if that's not how unions work, I don't know what you're on about, Brian. But it's one of those things where, is it a clear specific threat from the company? No, absolutely not. Is it sort of being you should deeply consider all aspects of this, including the ones that will be bad for you?
It's scare tactics.
It's a wee bit, yeah.
That's all it is. It is just, this is very important, and you wouldn't want to make the wrong decision now.
Definitely not. You know what we think.
Yep. Look at all the progress you've made without a union. You don't want a union. Please don't join the union. That would be bad for you and us, but let's not talk about that. So it's
Josh White here says, yes, it is how unions work. Nothing is concrete with collective bargaining. When the union came into my job, we ended up losing money and a lot of our benefits. So that doesn't seem good for you and that union. I suppose is the other thing. Not all unions are made the same.
Yeah, there can't just be a union that's a bad execution of a union, so they fuck up the negotiations or the bargaining. That's entirely possible. But
yes, unions are organizations, and sometimes they have their own incentives, can have their own corruption, and and all of those things as well. So it's as Pepperoni Gelato. That'd be nice. As Pepperoni Gelato says, some are good, some are really bad. It's not a blanket thing. That is how it is. I don't know enough about the CWA to say whether they're good or bad. So we'll just have to see how it is. But anyway, there's a bit of scare tactics going on here, I would certainly say. And also this bit, that means your ability to negotiate all your own working conditions will be turned over, just as the document says. As a sidebar, that seems I guess I can see why the union's hey, we're all banded together. So if you go and cut your own deal, that kind of does bad by the rest of your people. Yeah. But just the whole thing of if you're in the union, then you can't negotiate these things with us. This feels funky.
Yeah. If you want something that the union doesn't, too bad. You're signing your career and your working situations over to another entity instead of having the personal responsibility.
Yeah, just that's an entity that is more overtly in your favor, and of course also it's a whole bunch of employees together. So I guess that's the whole collective bargaining thing. It's like you'll have more clout if you're banded together with people. Yeah. And he says, achieving our workplace culture aspirations will best occur through active, transparent dialogue between leaders and employees that we can act upon quickly. That is the better path than simply signing an electronic form offered to you by the CWA or awaiting the outcome of a legally mandated and regulated bargaining process sometime in the future. And here's the funny thing. It's like there's a degree of that like can be true. If there's less stages in the process, we can act upon it quicker. The thing is, a lot of people don't trust them. A lot of employees don't trust them because they've only really seemed to take these issues a bit more seriously when they've been caught. And I think people's behavior when they think they can get away with it is sort of how you judge them.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, Bobby evidently didn't treat things seriously, like with Dan Bunting, who, was engaging in sexual harassment, but basically was protected by Bobby. Mm-hmm. So, when that sort of thing's going on, it's like, you know what, Brian, like, technically, yeah, it would be faster with less organizations and less legally regulated processes going on, but we don't trust you to keep your end of the bargain.
Yeah, you right now, you are the enemy.
Yeah. If we fail to achieve the workplace goals we have set forth, if we fail to do things we're committed to doing, then of course you will always have the right to engage with and vote for CWA. But we are confident we will make the progress we previously pledged to make and create a workspace that you all, with you, that we can all be proud of. As always, we welcome outreach and concerns or ideas to help with improvements, etc., etc., etc. So there you go. I mean, I'd say there, it's like you're kind of showing your hand there, Brian. You look a bit rustled. You look a bit scared. Perhaps if you're able to back this up with action that people could feel, then they maybe wouldn't feel like they need to, form a better ABK, do all of that stuff, join the union, etc. Right? Now, I'm not saying do or don't join a union, obviously. But, this is obviously happening because your staff are finding a workplace need that is not being fulfilled. Therefore, where do you go? You go to the union. So if you're already treating these people decently, perhaps they wouldn't feel like they really needed to do all of this. So really, this email is kind of evidence that the people at the company don't really feel that great.
Yeah, I mean,
because if they did, it wouldn't be needed.
Yep. So it is them going, oh shit, we need to stop this. This is bad for us. At least that's the service level read. You obviously could, it is literally possible that, the executives at Activision Blizzard do not like the Communication Workers of America as a union for good reason and are advising their employees very naturally, be careful what you're doing. This is an important decision. Mm-hmm. But if you think that's the case, what's the term they use? I don't know. I have something to sell you. I have something to sell you that's fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact quote, but there's something someone said on Twitter that I caught and I was interested by, which is, this might be too cynical, but I wonder if the rest of the industry pounding on Activision is literally, you stupid motherfuckers, if your workers unionize, ours will want to unionize, get your shit together.
Yeah.
Because that would be very interesting if this was like, well, it's technically not the first union because it was, what company was it? There's a game company recently unionized.
Paradox?
Was it
Another
Paradox?
one that was they were like pro-union and then a whole bunch of shit came out about them.
I can't remember. There was something, but it's like, that would be interesting because then Ubisoft and EA workers would start to go,
we have that?
what's happening over that fence? Are they getting time off? Can we have that? Like,
is that maternity leave I can see?
Is that maternity leave? Is that job security? Is that living wage? Fuck. Can we get that? How do we get that? And they're like, just, ABK just slides a letter in the door like, union. Maybe. Who knows?
Is that QA workers that aren't living in an 18-person apartment?
With 24 people in it? Yeah. Yeah.
Now, for Brian, we do have this account from Aubrey Ryan, who said, with Brian Bulatow in the media, I need to talk about my experience. Brian Bulatow called my personal cell in order to intimidate me over an initiative I had began in the company about work from home equity. I'll stretch my neck first. Got to get ready for the tweet chain. With the help of my peers, I sent a letter to the C-suite. I was amazed when Bobby Kotick responded to it, directing Brian to set a meeting with me. I had a brief exchange with Brian and a secretary. I stressed to both of them I wanted my support with me. My support and I chose a time and waited for our meeting. Our meeting came and passed. I emailed the secretary back. She said she never confirmed the time. Then I got a call on my personal cell. This man, at the top of the corporate food chain, proceeded to try and back me down, talk over me, and drop notes about his time in the CIA. Of course, highly relevant to her situation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, it was probably a vital company security. I mean, who knows what could have happened? We need Brian's big CIA experience.
Yeah.
The imbalance of power, the lack of third-party accountability, and the raw aggression involved in the act was incredibly staggering. I am still proud of myself for maintaining my cool in that situation, but it was incredibly daunting. And then I suppose people wonder why this individual was called an attack dog of the president that he worked under. So that's not a particularly great thing. And certainly when people see this Union busty email and then they see this account, once again, Activision Blizzard have been jujitsu'd.
Yep.
Their weight has been used against them.
Yep. They're just botching everything.
So well done, Aubrey. You have, I think, nailed a hardcore submission onto Brian, as big and strong and dangerous as I think he thinks he might be.
Yep.
Oh, I suppose I did just piss off a man with CIA ties, so I will see you all later. It's time to make an escape.
You can't escape it. CIA.
Need one of those. No, if I had those FF-14 smoke bombs,
Oh, yeah.
couldn't catch me.
Yeah.
Yep, so manager training for union-related issues. Training on how to union bust. What's this? This is from Julie, wherever Julie may be. Managers, we know many of you are getting questions from employees about union-related issues, and knowing how to respond can be tricky. To that end, we'll be holding several manager training sessions next week to provide you on how to address these questions and ask that you attend one of them. Please look for invitations for the end of the week. In the meantime, we'll be preparing a short QAs, some of your immediate questions. Of course, this is a message from Julie Hodges, backed up by Tracer and
Sakura-man.
of course, our two favorite characters, Ghost from Call of Duty and Sylvanas.
Yeah. Also, the OC from Heroes of the Storm.
Yep.
And Crash, who hasn't had a game, game cancelled. Also,
there
a
you
Candy
go.
Crush character in there for some reason.
I mean, surely the response here is, these are your legal rights. You're more than happy to do whatever you want, and there will be no, comeuppance for doing so, because
That's what you would expect.
surely
yes.
that's what you...
That's what you would certainly expect.
And there's the bingo. So there you go.
Oh, man.
Then, of course, there was the press conference where, yes, a very, rough situation with Christine here, who experienced rude comments about her body, unwanted sexual advances, being inappropriately touched, alcohol-infused team events, and cube crawls, and invited to have casual sex with her supervisors.
Like,
Imbalance of power?
fuck. Jesus Christ.
Imbalance of power? I mean, she's gonna, I have no idea what happened, but she's gonna see that and be like, well, if I say no, does that impact my career?
Traditional,
Sort of think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sort of part of the point, right?
That's how it works, yeah.
So, yeah. God damn. And so from this, there's a number of, of demands, obviously, which are 100 million. Not for her, 100 million for the overall victim compensation fund. This is, of course, calling the 18 million that was agreed with the EEOC. Just about everybody thinks that's a load of piss. Now, you might be like, 18 million, that's a lot of money. To which we're like, yeah, it is a lot of money, but also there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you divide it by that number of people, and you think about, it's what I use when I did a recording of this for the news channel. Yeah. Snowball rolling down a hill. You just, because someone's being harassed and all that, you pause the snowball. Not only are they going to not roll down the hill, which is my analogy for career advancement, they're actually going to melt a bit.
Yeah. Because
how can you thrive and do well when you're basically being stagnated in a position where you're being abused, right?
Yep.
A real apology to all victims, because I think the only real apology is action.
Yeah.
So for this one, you'd almost need to time travel 5 years into the future and see what the company looks like. But I think the only true apology is, number one, doing right by the people who have been wronged, and then number two, proving through time that they've actually fixed up.
Yeah, and
number three, to fix the career damage that people continue to suffer.
Yeah, you know what? You know what a real apology looks like to me? It's an apology that's not very clearly solely for PR purposes or legally mandated.
Yeah.
That's the thing where if they went out and said, okay, well, no one has told us to do this, but we're putting in, 200 million for the stream for a victim compensation fund, something like that, and then they'll do it themselves or something along those lines instead of the legal mandate. Because it's being told to apologize does not an apology make.
Yeah.
Like, it's like when you're a kid and your parent tells you to apologize to someone, you're like, sorry. Say it with meaning. Sorry. Like that'll have to do. That'll have to do. Come on, fuck's sake. It's that shit where like it's not an apology until it's unasked for or unprompted. Really, it needs to be from the heart. Although from the heart of Activision Blizzard, King fuck only knows what it would be.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now then, get your Homelander gifts out.
Oh Jesus Christ!
It's time for the breast milk to be stolen. So yes, it's been revealed that Activision Blizzard employees who were breastfeeding were subject to not great, pretty awful and unsanitary conditions, in addition to having inadequate places to store their breast milk, and it regularly being stolen. Now, this is the sort of thing that might come off as a bit strange to people outside of America, because I actually saw somebody being like, why are you pumping breast milk at work? And it turned out, it was just on Twitter, it turned out they were from Denmark, and their response was like, oh, we have 6 months of maternity, so they don't need to do that. Yeah. So, there's that whole thing, where, generally in America, workers don't have those things that I think are quite taken for granted and standard in many other countries in the world. Yeah. And that does mean that, for a lot of women, they have to pump at work. From my understanding there, it's like, it's a really important thing, and it's not just a situation of, you have him, you have a kid, the milk comes out, there you go, job's good. It's actually, for many women, it's quite hard to actually make enough to sustain their child. Sometimes they'll maybe need to use some formula or something like that to sort of bolster.
Yep.
So look, if you have to pump at work, well, I mean, it's not in your boob anymore. The kid needs it, and it's taken out and put in the fridge so it can be stored, so it stays good, so the kid can have it, so that the baby gets its nourishment.
You can't give it to the kid when the kid's not at work with you.
Yeah, exactly. And then what happens is if somebody steals that breast milk, well, milk's gone.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to wait to make some more, so now the kid's been screwed over.
Yeah.
And this is going to be very distressing.
Of course.
This is going to be very distressing to to mothers who are, of course, going to be worrying about the health of their kid, and it's not the sort of thing that you or I really would have appreciated from our experience. I mean, I never had a younger sibling or anything because I'm a child, but just a few people in and around us have got new kids, and just hearing about, oh no, actually a new baby needs to have a health visitor come and check them out, and there's lots of problems that can happen with kids. So it's a very, very stressful time. Even more stressful when there's no maternity leave going on and you're having to pump at work, and then some people come in and steal the goddamn milk. Fuck. I mean, fuck me. What's going on? What is going on?
It's just so absurd. Like, what are you doing? Are you selling it? Are you drinking it?
So, I then found out today that there is a black market for breast milk. And I thought, a black market? Why is it a black? Oh, I guess it's not really FDA regulated.
Yeah.
Apparently, bodybuilders. I think there's some people, I don't know if it's pseudoscience or whatever, but they think there's great health benefits to human breast milk as opposed to that of a cow.
Good for you.
Or a goat or an almond. Yep. Bit different for the almonds.
Jesus, yeah.
But yeah, apparently also bodybuilders. Yeah. Some bodybuilders think that, we're going to steal that milk to get some gains, brother.
That's it.
And then I guess there's the Homelanders of the world. And then I think there's people for whom, it's maybe a bit of a sexual thing.
I would severely hope it's not, but it could be.
I mean, I look at this, and the first thing I thought is like, surely this is like a...
Yeah.
Surely someone gets off on that. Like, why are you going around stealing breast milk?
thirsty. Like.
Yeah, it's not like, oh dear, I want a
Yeah.
cup of tea and I have no milk.
Aye.
Plus, in America, if you say tea, turns out it doesn't mean the thing that we drink. If you say tea in America, at least in my experience there, I'd always have to ask, because I've been there a few times, I'd have to ask for hot tea.
They drink iced tea by default.
Because it's iced tea by default. Yeah, I'd have to ask for hot tea.
I feel sorry for all of you who have to live in places so hot you have to drink iced tea.
That said, iced tea, one of the things I enjoy about being, the few times of being in America, I always make sure, if I'm going past a Starbucks, I'm going to get some of the iced tea. Drink all the iced tea. And I come back here and I drink loads of Lipton iced tea. And I look at the back of the Lipton iced tea and I think,
sugar.
good God, that's a lot of sugar. Oh dear.
Yep.
What's hot tea? Hot tea is, it's an English breakfast. It's an Earl Grey. It could be pu'er tea. It could be oolong.
Maybe an Assam, something like that.
Yeah, rube, the one from South Africa,
yeah.
red leaf.
Yeah, that one's fucking class.
The hot water goes on it, the boiling water goes on it. Yeah. Maybe some of them you put milk in, some of them you don't. But this isn't actually about tea. This is about breast milk being stolen. And my point was, it's not like people are going around being like, oh no, the semi-skimmed milk is gone. I guess I'll use the different milk from the weird fridge. No, it's not that. And then again, so not only is it extremely creepy and weird from the people perpetrating this, it's also, obviously extremely disrespectful to the women themselves, and it's also, legitimately harmful to the child. It's, yes, you can go and purchase formula, but it's, from what I understand, it's actually kind of expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah.
So it's overall a really, really bad, quite horrible situation. It's honestly the sort of thing, most of us saw this and couldn't believe it, frankly. It was like, what the this is so wacky.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I can actually think of is another absolute indictment of Activision Blizzard King. Because maybe someone took the breast milk because they couldn't afford milk at the Blizzard canteen. Maybe they were stealing from the baby to try and feed themselves, which honestly wouldn't be too surprising at this point in time.
Yeah, so there was one direct testimony from Stephanie Krutzik, who said, there was no fridge in the room, so I had to label and carry my breast milk out and store it in the break room fridge. It was very clearly breast milk in baggies with the baby's face on it. One day I went to retrieve my pumped supply at the end of the day, and it was gone. Someone either took my bags and tossed them, or had stolen them for some creepy reason. And it's not here in this doc, but I saw another thing. It was a Slack screenshot.
Yeah.
It was from a woman who worked in security, who's basically, the TLDR was, hello, there's men stealing the breast milk. HR, you guys haven't dealt with this shit. That was the basics of it. So, fuck me. Oof. Ugh.
Fucking hell.
Now, I think this one for Stephanie, this was taking place in 2008. Don't have timestamps on the other things, but I think this has been shared in the context that it wasn't a one-off incident.
Yeah, that's fucking wild.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Jesus Christ.
So in this case, yes, this one could have just been tossed. There is a testimony via screenshotted Slack message from a woman who works in Blizzard Security who did make the claim that it was stolen by men. So there's also that going on.
Very good.
Oh boy. Then, of course, media coverage for Activision Blizzard.
Yeah.
About really all the stories that we've...
Yeah, man. That's the world we're living in now. Like, just breast milk thieves in game dev companies.
It's so weird. You can hardly believe it's... There's multiple people saying this is the sort of thing that was happening, so I'm not saying that I don't believe it. It's like unbelievable. It's like, what crazy madness.
Yeah. Do unions steal breast milk? They might be better without a union. You know what, Federico? Tell Brian to use that in his next email.
That's it. Honestly, from the from the perspective of I think many other places in the world, it's kind of crazy that it seems like women have to pump at work. Because there's not really the maternity accommodations being made. So even that's crazy enough to many of us in other bits of the world. So then here, not only are you sitting there doing your job, having to pump milk, maybe you're having to pay for childcare while you're away, which is going to make it even more financially damaging. But then some fucking bozo steals it on you, maybe for his cornflakes, maybe for his tea, maybe to get off. Who the hell knows? For every reason involved is bad.
Yeah, put some beer in the fridge in its place, like.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So there was, I think as time went on, there was like a formal lactation room, which is a like a requirement, a legal requirement, and it was not really being treated properly or seriously by the company. Many of them had said, "Hey, this is like some crazy porous table. We really, because we're kind of, operating with bodily secretions here. So we don't want a porous table in this room. We want a table that's easy to keep, very sanitary." That wasn't listened to. And it turned out actually after stuff was escalated publicly, then the facilities team at Blizzard actually went and replaced the table. So table's replaced.
Nice.
Great. Yeah, but what the fuck?
Just need to replace Bobby next. Yeah.
Oh, what the fuck? What the fuck? Ugh. Ugh. Right. Ugh.
Good sounds. Exactly what people feel, I think.
Endwalker.
Yeah. Yep.
The thumbnail for that video, I'm thinking of just going with Homelander.
Go for it.
Because it's a creepy situation, and I think that Homelander, especially the people who've watched The Boys, which is, great show. Also,
fantastic show.
Northern Irish connection. Because your man is from Belfast, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The creator of The Boys, the comics. But sort of besides the point. Like, it just captures like a fucking weird terror with that character.
Yeah.
That I think applies pretty good to the people who are going to be stealing. Now then, Final Fantasy XIV.
Yep.
Which, Garth Ennis,
fucking experience.
Which we maybe won't linger on for the longest amount of time, because honestly, this headache is about to take me out.
Yeah, well, we do have to talk about it because it's one
of
the best things that's happened to video games.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about narrative.
Yeah, no. Well, no.
Other than be like big, good, very
other
heavy.
than good. I have 4 keywords that describes it later on in this document. Not the narrative, but the whole game. Anyway.
So they won at the Game Awards, best community support and best ongoing game.
Yeah, and I believe it was
well deserved.
Yeah, I believe it was Skill Up who said it won best ongoing game because it is the best ongoing game, but it won community support because the community supports the devs that well. And you're like, fucking yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that is it indeed. Now, we do have a side note that Square Enix have both won and lost big because, FF14 team, incredible, but maybe not all of Square Enix is having the biggest wins. They did have wins. So, Life is Strange won Game for Impact. Guardians of the Galaxy won Best Narrative. Nier Replicant won Best Score. Very deserved.
Okabe is a genius.
Tad drama, though, because Final Fantasy VII... retro remake intergrade
Final Fantasy VII remake intergrade.
Absolutely. Finally has made its way to PC in full intergrade form because it's not an upgrade, it's not a side grade, it's an intergrade. What? Oh, I'm so confused. How do they name their games anyway? But it's exclusive to Epic Games and it costs $70, which, as PC gamers, we all go, oh! As people who own a PlayStation 5 and have indeed purchased games on the PlayStation 5, that is the new normal.
Yep. Yeah. That's brutal, like.
It's pretty damn expensive. So yes, it has, first it had timed exclusivity on PlayStation as the original, then timed exclusivity for the Intergrade release, now Epic exclusivity. Basically just means they're obviously going to cut every single deal they can if they believe it's going to be the best for the bottom line.
Yeah, which is... Like, I find it really pissed me off because I have such a collection of FF games on Steam now. And I'm going to have to wait
a big, nice ordered list.
And I'm going to have to wait a year for FF7 Remake Integrated. That said, I would rather play it on PS5, but I'm not going to buy it for 70 quid.
You can't.
That's the problem. Like,
you can't fuck with someone's ability to have all their games neatly ordered in whatever order tickles their fancy.
Yep.
That's sacred.
Yeah. So the other part of this is real pain in the balls is Forspoken is $70 on Steam, which is out in, they announced that, I think, May 22nd, which looks interesting. The gameplay show that it looks really fun.
Gameplay looks interesting. I got a bit turned off by the whole modern speak.
That's a very weird thing.
I don't like it.
I roughly trust them, but also Luminous Productions, I'm not entirely sure it'll feel great. I'm hoping it's good. It looks pretty good, but it's $70 on Steam. They're just charging $70 on PS5. It's the same fucking game. Buy it. You're like, people will. But they're not always fallible because, first of all, they're releasing Babylon's Fall. They shouldn't release that game. I don't think they should release that game.
You and Dakor both played
based on what I played, based on what I watched Dakor play, I don't think they should release that game. Platinum Games they've just not done a great job with it. Even though they did.
Sad for you to say, considering.
Yeah, I love Platinum Games to pieces. I love their games, but they've just shit the bed too many times. Babylon's Fall, live service action game. A character action game with gear scaling impacting how things play is really dangerous, and in the beta, in a couple of the phases, they didn't get it right. So, And also, what was the other part I was going to say? There's something else. Oh yes, I actually hate the shit out of them because The World Ends With You, Neo, didn't beat their performance, underperformed by their standards. Just by, first of all, they had way too high expectations for it, considering there was no support for the original DS game. There was no re-release for ages. The only re-release was on Switch. Then they released the sequel on PS4 and Switch, marketed it heavier for the PS4, as far as I could see, and then wondered why no one fucking bought it. Stupid bastards. Anyway, Square Enix are interesting, but we should talk about Endwalker, of course.
Yes, so basically, let's see, what are your exceptional, long, risky?
Yep. So my keywords for the MSQ are exceptional, because it is exceptional in most ways. It is long. It is both long literally and long experientially, where, I think it was around 40 something hours of my time. If you'd told me it was 80, I would have looked at the clock and went, that was a fast 80 hours. Oh, well, but it clearly would have happened. It's very long experientially. It was also risky. Mostly in terms of structure and theme. There's things they do with the structure that I see people are very, very unhappy with in terms of how pacing went. It was they really laid out stuff. They wanted to make sure everything they did landed with you, and they took a fucking ton of time to do that. Like even the intro, like, well, not the intro, but after that, the first section is so long and so laborious. They really wanted to sell that. Well, I think they wanted to sell that fighting everything you see is not the answer. So there's so little combat for so much of the game. You kind of used that after like late Shadowbringer stuff, but it's so long. It's so long, and there's just so slow at times, but in a way that I think perfectly works for it.
Yes, there's one of the. I'm not going to do any spoilers whatsoever here. Don't worry. There is one of the slow bits that you talked about that I also did find to be quite slow. Yeah. There was another slow bit that you talked about that you thought was appropriate and enjoyed, and I also thought it was appropriate and enjoyed it. So, it'll be different stuff for different people. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just like the more time I get to spend with the characters, I'm happy, and yeah.
No, I mean, the some of the risks they took, I'm really happy that they did, but also it was fucking lucky that they're so good. Which sounds weird because I'm calling them lucky and good at the same time.
I know what you mean, though. It's like...
Yeah, they could have went very wrong, but...
This is a big shot if you can land it, and you need to be really good to land it, and thankfully they are.
Yeah, I know this was a... I guess they needed to thread the needle, but it was actually threading all the needles that they'd placed so far up in a row from A Realm Reborn to the very end, and they needed to align all those needles to thread it properly, and they managed to do it, but... one veering off would have completely fucking wrecked it, and it didn't happen. The other word I wanted to call it is heavy. It's fucking heavy in so many ways, because it's the end of the culmination of 8 years, or I guess a decade overall, because it does bring in elements of 1.0. It's just heavy. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I'm not sitting down and focusing on something, like, my walk to and from this office is just me thinking about different bits of dialogue, different characters, different themes, different things that we're doing. It is fucking... It weighs a ton. In a way, it's also like you feel so much lighter and richer afterwards. But it weighs a ton. It weighs a ton. And then the one thing I want to say is the mystery novel element that I kind of twigged on after reading Yoshida Uncensored and seeing how he likes mystery novels. Thinking about mystery novel structure and how they want to set up little things for you to follow along and see if you get the right answer. They do it in a not a very, I guess, obvious way. And they've been doing it in expansions previously. I just didn't notice it because I wasn't thinking about the mystery novel aspect.
Yeah.
So I was going through this, and I don't have my fucking notebook. My notebook's downstairs. But I have a small little notebook that I was writing in as I was playing. And I must have had like 30, 50 maybe pages of just scribbled notes frantically as I was seeing things. As I was like,
handwriting.
yeah, I can't read any of it, but it was just like, I can go through it and I can see massive bits from like, I think this is happening, character name, verb, etc. Stuff like that. I'm like, okay, this is all interesting stuff. I just all these little details going back through it. I'm like, you set everything up perfectly. I always felt like I was following along in a way that feels fucking fantastic. You didn't surprise me overtly because you never tried to. You introduced elements and then slowly went, here you go, here's the event. You're like, fuck, let's go.
You don't want to go around doing Shyamalan twists.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like fucking Sixth Sense is great, but uh-oh.
Yeah.
It didn't really work for him too well afterwards, did it? Right? That's just
Yeah.
that thing, you can't have those be big. I mean, big surprises are fine, but if it's a big surprise, it's at the expense of like it being an enjoyable journey up to that point. I mean,
Yeah.
and issues. Sylvanas plotline. Anyway.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. But also, like, the one thing I will say is if you don't mind being a little bit more clued in, you should probably look up what a lot of words mean. So they're very heavy in their use of Greek at times. And if you look up what certain Greek words mean when you see them, when you come across them, you'll be like, oh, you bastards. You cheeky fucking bastards. And I definitely will have a... are we going to do a spoiler cast? Probably a spoiler cast. Absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah, we have to. It's
I have to
it's
finish
it's
first,
way too.
but
He
yes.
has to finish, and we'll clearly label it as a spoiler cast. But I also want to do something where I do want to go through. This will maybe be a video in the new year because it'll take a little while to go back through the story and pick up every little thing. But I want to do a video which is all the little bits that I found when I was going through that I have scribbled down in my notes. All the little all the like Greek words that I found that meant something. Specifically place names, which they also have a history of doing as well, which is why I thought about this time with a couple of the Shadowbringers dungeons. But it's just it's so good. There's so many little things. How they introduce elements and use a single word, and you think about what that word means and go, this isn't what I expected. And there's I can't say anything vaguely related, but it's so fucking cool and had me thinking for hours on end. It is fantastic, and I guess that's something of a spoiler. Well, they did the Greek justice. It's mostly it's very rarely spoken, if ever. It's mostly just old I guess concepts from Greek philosophy and storytelling and stuff like that they use, which is fucking fantastic. But yeah, I can't say. Oh yeah. It's not all Greek. It's a lot of other things as well. A lot of other little bits and bobs. They say if you read into why they use specific numbers or specific names, you're like, you bastards! Fuck you! You give me a massive hint there, or not even just a hint, but by using this one thing, you've communicated to me your entire intent behind this. So what's otherwise generally a throwaway bit of dialogue, you've communicated that you understand what you're talking about in such depth that you're like, oh, to write this character's dialogue, you went and read like 8 books to write this character's dialogue, even though they only have a couple lines. You mad people, absolute mad people. But it is absolutely fantastic. I think. So another thing I wanted to say about it, I guess, is there's a lot of it is subjective.
Yeah.
There is an objectivity to quality, of course, that you can kind of argue about, but there's a subjectivity that, for me, as someone who's enjoyed a lot of JRPGs and enjoyed a lot of anime, it hits so perfect. Like everything is just so perfect, which is weird because historically it's been very Western styled in a lot of ways.
Yes,
In terms of how it's been written, there's a little tinge of Japaneseness that's introduced. That's just like, fuck yeah, this is great. This is exactly everything I like. This is everything I like and everything I want. Fantastic.
The
Wonderful.
more that I delay the spoiler cast by not having it finished, the closer you'll get to literally exploding.
Yeah. Fuck. I want to talk about this stuff so bad.
Oh man,
It is fucking fantastic. Then I guess what else? Yeah, the subjectivity, it is perfectly targeted for people like me. People might disagree with some stuff, which is why I also consider it risky. Then there's other elements of music. I don't even want to talk with music because I can't do it justice talking about it outside of I have been just walking around poorly attempting to sing a couple songs for fucking ages and whistling the shit out of them, everything. Like, it is so good, it cannot be stopped. It cannot be stopped. He is an absolute fucking hero.
As for where I am exactly, I cannot answer that. I will say I have done the first trial and I have done 3.
Yes. Yep.
I can't even say that. No, it's just important not to spoil people.
Yep, absolutely. So
So in terms of other things, then you're enjoying Sage.
oh man, Sage is. I can't say massively because I've only got it to level 84 as of today, but it really owns. Like, playing Eucrasia is a very fun mechanic. Eucrasia basically is a button with a I think it's a half GCD or a 1 second GCD that improves your single target damage, your single target heal diagnosis, or your AoE heal prognosis, adding mana cost, adding extra mana cost and a shield to your heals, to those 2 heals, or turning your single target attack into a dot. So you basically will go, well, I have Eucrasia bound to C, and then my abilities are 1, Q, and R that are affected. So I'm going into a fight and I'm going,
That's like the rhythm.
yeah, of like getting this quick to like C1 tab, C1 tab.
I guess
C1
both
tab.
play
It's
both
fucking class.
playing ninjas. There's like a nice rhythm.
Yeah, there's a sort of rhythm to it that is fucking fantastic. Like, and also dealing with some AoE damage that they come in, some I guess slightly new things that they've done mechanically feels fucking incredible. Like Redacted has a multi-stack hit marker.
Ah, yes.
A multi-hit stack marker that hits a couple times, and a couple times I've been in there, I've seen healers not handle it and not know. They think, oh, it's one big burst, but it's multiple, and then people die. But as a Sage, you're like, I know it's coming. I have all the buttons to make it look like no one's taken any damage to this whole thing by myself, and it feels
Trial
fucking
1?
fantastic. Yeah,
Oh, that.
yeah,
Okay.
it feels fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
Trial
so
1
good.
Trial 1
Yeah.
is so good.
Yeah,
Trial
it is.
1's so good.
It is
Actually, Dungeons 1, 2, and 3 are also so good.
Everything's good.
The
Everything's
end
good.
of Dungeon 1, is it Dungeon 1? No, it was Dungeon 2. The end of Dungeon 2 feels
Yeah.
like a trial at the end of a patch.
It's fantastic. It's fucking
Yeah,
wonderful.
some business like.
Yeah, there's what else? Yeah, the only problem with Sage at the minute I have is keeping a tank alive during big pulse is really, really rough. But
Just the
I'm
single
also
target dump
yeah,
potential.
I'm also coming from playing White Mage as a healer. So where I have Benediction, I have Divine Benison, I have Cure 2 being, pretty strong, pretty reliable, but now I have to basically spam Eucrasian Diagnosis, which drains my mana immediately, or burn through my Adder's Gall, which I burn through really quickly to try and do anything. It's possible, but it's definitely like, oh shit, this is harder than I'm used to. But it's really fun. And then, I guess, Ninja, White Mage, Bard, Red Mage. All really improved. Ninja, I'll have to get used to. I might need to change my binds because Fleeting Raju and Fork Raju are interesting, but it feels so fucking good.
Frankly, my binds and overall setup with a ninja is just not good enough for me to comment.
Yeah.
All I can say is I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the faster pace
Yeah.
of the Nenki Gauge generation. But have to remember, I finished Shadowbringers hours before servers went down.
Yeah.
And that does mean that like the new Shadowbringers our abilities are literally not on my bars. So
Yeah.
once I hit max level, I'm taking a breather and I am pulling everything off every button I have and I am working out everything properly.
Yep, you should. You should. But man,
So-
fucking
Yeah, it's been a fucking great time. For other things, I suppose there has been our 2002, which is fixed for me. I've found actually a bunch of server tech people doing digging. Found that 202 or 2002 happened every 15 minutes on the dot, apparently.
interesting.
That was the one that came from the server, not the one that came
Yeah.
from your connection.
Yeah.
So, me just being in the queue, but having to nurse my computer to keep in the queue. That stopped.
Yeah.
For me. So the queue's
Yeah.
actually reliable.
Do you know why?
No.
So this is something I'll have to dig through some of my old tweets to find this one, because I think I retweeted it, right? So, and this goes to show just how, I mean, obviously this kind of comes as like, oh, that's an obvious thing to do, but it shows how much insane work they actually put in to fix this problem. Let's see. They took their own testing lobby servers from the development and shifted them over to live. They went, I can almost imagine, you know, obviously it wouldn't be in English, but I can almost imagine Yoshi P leaning over a desk just with his head in his hands like he does. Maybe he takes his glasses off and just goes, players cannot play our game. Development must cease. Fuck this. All
No
of you
test servers.
take all of our servers and deploy them. I don't care how much work it is. I don't care what it costs in our schedule. Players need to play the fucking game now because they are having a bad experience. And they went and did. They actually just went, well, yeah, here's all our fucking development servers. We'll move them to live. All the reconfiguring, all the setting up. And I think that's largely what's killed the 2002 problem.
Interesting.
Because they have the extra lobby stuff to handle that load, which is, that's a lot of work. Like,
Yeah, well,
That's a lot of work.
it's so much better now that that is fixed. We've also got 7 days of free game time as compensation for everything, and they may do further game time, in case the situation doesn't get better. So we'll see how that goes, but they're doing that well. I enjoy some things like,
that's great.
yep, fantastic. Get some merch. Of course, in our own Discord, we do have a channel for posting this.
Yeah, we do indeed.
There.
That was me.
He's not moving, boys. Looking bad. Very sad.
Yeah, and I will say that was many days ago, and to this point, that opening Tales of Loss and Fire and Faith is still in my head.
Yeah.
Will be forever.
So, events then. Starlight Celebration, December
Yep.
16th. So, there you go.
Time for Eorzean Christmas.
Any, like, what goes on in that, or is it more of just a sort of visual cosmetic?
Just request.
Oh,
If you
nice.
go through to the site, it'll give you a bit of context, just a little tiny bit of context.
Stone
like
of Load.
Yeah, the little Yeti that could.
Oh,
So I imagine it's going to be, I haven't done one of the Christmas ones before. I imagine it's going to be this really fun little setup for Christmas. You didn't do the Blizzard one. The summer one where you get the polar
bear?
bear.
Nah.
Yeah, because that was a cool little quest as well.
that was a bit silly of me.
Yeah.
So what do we get? We get a wall. Wall decoration for your home, as well as some Christmassy minions.
Yep.
There we go.
But more or less, you get to show up and it's all Christmassy.
Very nice.
It's very good. Yeah.
Then, of course, we all have to adjust our junk food brands to whatever gives us double XP
Yeah.
or an emote.
It was
Hope you're all drinking. Was it for Halo? It's Monster or is it Rockstar?
Rockstar for Halo.
Rockstar for Halo.
I actually have it's Rockstar for Halo, and it's was it? Is it Apex on Monster Cans? I think.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I remember
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's time for Warriors of Light to get pizza. Use promo code Endwalker at checkout. Get a pizza emote. Only in the US. Ree!
Yeah, which does mean that it's likely going to be available in EU later, but hopefully not too much later. So the Fat Black Chocobo was a long time later, and I don't think the Chocopoker is available yet.
Would it be? Because it's way harder to do that in the EU.
Yeah,
we
well,
don't really have.
yeah.
It's like Deliveroo's in every country.
Yeah, so one of the things there is the Fat Black Chocobo went from being a Amazon promotion of spend this money, get the shit for free. Apparently, in just across Europe, that's harder to do logistically because you can't just give away shit with purchases without a lot of putting through the right paces and stuff like that. So they did it with the Twitch. The Twitch event was the Fat Black Chocobo.
Yes.
The Chocopoker was for Butterfingers in the US, and that had a whole big meme of its own of FF players enjoying Butterfingers. But they haven't done that in the EU yet either. And the Fat Black Chocobo was available in... Was it the Fat Black Chocobo was KFC in China? Or Japan or something? Yeah, because I remember all the bits of... I remember all the articles about people eating too much. Yep. I will say it is not going to replace sliced bread.
No.
Sliced bread's way too good.
There you go.
It's funny as fuck. Anytime I see Connor, he just slice breads, and I'm just on the SDS vendor. I just eat bread. The first time he's like, holy shit, the bread remote works on the bike. That's so cool. I'm like,
Nice.
yeah, just taking a break, eat some bread. Like,
Oh dear. So there you go. That's the comings and goings. There's not a lot of news in FF because basically we're playing the game and having fun. That's the news.
yeah, we can't talk about it.
Yeah,
can't
and
talk about it. It's so
can't ruin it for people.
fucking good. Like, it is obscenely good, and
Yes,
I
more
cannot
videos.
wait to try the. I cannot fucking wait to try the extreme trials. But I need to get Sage the 91st because I'm going to heal this expansion or main heal this expansion, which is I shouldn't have spent all my aphorisms on accessories for Ninja. Whoops. But I did do it because I wanted to get the Burning Fields dummy down so I could prove I'm not actually in bad DPS.
Ah, shit.
Yep.
I'll have to do that.
Yep. Gonna have to learn your stone, sky, and sea. So you learn your rotation. Maybe you'll bind some of your buttons. Maybe. Yeah, I need
I'll
to
try
yeah.
everyone.
And then don't know if we'll likely won't be able to do it in time because it'd be difficult. And we are closing on the 23rd. Without spoilers, is better than Shadowbringers. Personally, I think so. I was gonna say by a decent margin. Yeah, to me, it's not really a big thought. It is. It is. They've learned a lot of lessons from Shadowbringers. Done the good things better. But anyway, what was I saying about? Yes, I need to get the 90 for Sage to do Pandemonium next week. Hopefully, might be able to get some vague review of that out next week. Sorry, no.
Week after next.
A week and a half.
Okay.
No, the Tuesday, the 21st, because we're closing the 23rd. So hopefully we get something. Maybe get something the 22nd if I can force it through. Maybe, but yep. And I can't wait. Based on the quality of fights so far, based on how the trials are, based on how the dungeons are, I expect the raid to be fucking incredible. I really, really do.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so
Good shit. Good shit.
it's so man.
You
It
know
is.
what my weekend's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, for context, I will have to sit down for probably a couple hours in a quiet, dark room to meditate on whether or not I think Endwalker is better than Nier Automata overall.
Whoa.
And that is a heavy
Okay,
statement
big.
for me. It is fucking unbelievable. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. Also, the writers, the writing team need a raise. They need blank checks. They need statues. Like between Ishikawa, Oda, and Yoshi P, they need to go down in fucking history. Like, absolutely, 100%. No two ways about it.
Oh, even for the Shadowbringers stuff, like.
Yep. I can't wait to see because I believe people largely agree Endwalker's fantastic. I cannot wait to see the next FanFest or the next panel that Ishikawa and Oda are at, because I remember so fucking vividly, I remember that PAX East panel where she's introduced as, this is Natsuko Ishikawa. She wrote 5.0, and everyone clapped so hard and stood up and clapped that she's just fucking crying her eyes out. Like, yeah. You think that was 5.0, not even 5.3. You think that was good? You know, people will be throwing their fucking wallets onto the stage. They'll be throwing their clothes onto the stage. They'll be throwing their car keys onto the stage. They'll be like, no, just fucking take it. Take it. You deserve it, absolutely. Can you say how much you've cried? A lot.
Oh.
A lot. Fairly regularly. There's even a point in time, I'm shitting you fucking not, I had to bite back tears when I was walking home the other day because Nikki was in and we're talking about a specific bit.
Oh.
And I was literally just thinking about a couple lines of dialogue, and I was just like, man, I'm actually like, it's not like it's really sad or anything. It's just so it's what it's what I mean by heavy. It's just so emotionally overwhelming. You're like, fucking hell, Jesus Christ, brutal stuff, man. It hits like a
whelmed
fucking
he starts to secrete salty water.
brick. Yeah,
Wild.
hits like a truck full of bricks. Like, it's good. It is fucking good.
Oh, it sure is. Man, yeah, I know what I'm doing this weekend. That's the deal. To finish us off, to recap content for this week, we do have our Big Sylvanas cinematic breakdown video. We also have got a video that went up like 15 minutes before this one, so you almost certainly missed the notification, which is this one. This changed how I think about Warcraft. It did. Big lore came out.
Yep.
There's quite a lot going on. Quite a lot going on in that old Warcraft universe indeed. So we dive into that and try to work out what the hell it actually means.
For our other channel, my Endwalker video, it is spoiler safe, which means that it's extremely clear where the spoilers are and you're given ample warning.
Yep.
So don't worry, you can watch it, go check it out. There'll be no spoilers. I would say if you're the most no spoilers, then, look at the timestamps at the bottom and listen instead of watch. That obviously avoids the visual spoilers that are impossible to not put into a video. Yep. So yeah, there you go. Endwalker, I'm happy, very happy indeed. Then for news, of course, we have got ActiBliz. We have, of course, got ActiBliz. We've got, Take Two trying to take out the game. Well, not take out, but trying to, stamp all over the rights of the game It Takes Two.
Which one game of the year? So
which one game of the year? So yeah, get screwed. Yep. The sad of GOG.
Yeah, that's real sad.
Because we really like GOG, and they are actually coming upon some rough times.
DRM free. Who gives a fuck? Apparently, a lot of people care, but not enough to keep them afloat. But that's it.
That's sad.
Based on what I've seen overall, it is mostly their fault for not running the organization as clean as they could, or as focused on they could. It's kind of what we talk about.
It's sad. We like what they stand for there, so we would like to see things go well for them. And we do try to think about that. Think about how they can maybe double down on the core of their business in a way that could actually provide some really good value to customers. So it was a fun one to talk about.
Just Swish says, it's funny how everything except FF14 is on fire now.
I'm glad you're here, keeping us sane.
Yeah, so, that's definitely not true, right? Because there's a lot of games, a lot of indie games, a lot of small games, a lot of reasonable games that are coming out and they're just perfectly fine. Sometimes there are games that come out that are very good, but because they're very good and we're in a drought of mainstream games, they get elevated. Something like Deathloop, which definitely got a lot more praise than it deserved, but it came out at a time where it was a little bit, there wasn't much else to talk about, so people kind of got riled up over it, I believe. But at the same time, FF14 is thriving in a way that no one's ever seen a game, basically. And that's because they are bucking the trend. Under Yoshi P's leadership and the team who've, seemingly adopted his principles fairly well and are working underneath him, they really, unlike the entire stack of most gaming businesses today, they care about the player, the end user, the player, because they wouldn't say end user, they say player. They're players. Yoshi P considers players warriors of light. He calls them that in most of the times he talks about us. He a couple of different times in his career in FF14 going on stage and stuff, he's written a note in his column saying about the Warrior of Light's power actually helped him do what he needed to do then, because he was tired or anxious or afraid because he suffers from stage fright. But he knows people are warriors of light. He's like, yeah, they're my people. He treats them as players as opposed to I imagine there's no one above him making a call that cares about the player or doesn't care about the player because he's at the top. He's like, no, I care about the player. And I think that's one of the things we've kind of lost, largely speaking. And I'd be here for the next 45 minutes if I tried to explain why I think why. But
I think we may get to that in our Yoshi P video series.
Absolutely. Yep, definitely. It's weird. It's like because Square Enix are they're doing so well in certain cases and they're doing so poorly in others that it's like, but I think largely speaking their heart's in the right place, especially after Guardians of the Galaxy this year. It looks like they've recovered from that Avengers catastrophe fairly well in terms of, what if we treat Western players like Eastern players? Oh shit, we figured something out. What if we get developers to make good games? Holy fuck. So, I think Square Enix and Capcom alongside them are kind of leading the front towards better video games. And the more FF14 can be a standard bearer, more people can pay attention to it for how they care for the player, and that's what's led them so far. Beautiful. That's the future we all hope for, as opposed to all the fucking Activision Blizzard bullshit or Ubisoft bullshit or EA's past bullshit or Take-Two bullshit. All that, it's just tiring.
Yeah. Face is tired.
Yep.
Actually, my face is literally tired. I I get you, Mass Effect NPC. Oh man, right? We're gonna take off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
some sage
gonna
leveling
take
on the
off. Chill out a bit. Gonna wake up tomorrow and end walk, and saunter, and run, and everything. It's gonna be great.
Walk the end.
I'll try not to end everything. Actually, that could be a mistake.
Yeah. But, yeah.
So yeah, fucking hell. Right, there we go. Whew.
Yeah.
Just
before. Yeah. Yoshi P is on the board of directors, but he didn't start there. Yoshi P, for people who aren't familiar with his history, he started working at what was the first game for Square Enix? I can't remember if it was Dragon Quest X, the MMO first, or if it was the Dragon Quest card games he was working on, where he wrote stuff for them and did some game design. But he definitely didn't start. He was nobody when he started FF14. It was literally him going, no one has told me to do this. Yeah, it's Dragon Quest Bellular, that's what it was. But no one told him to do this. He thought it was an emergency. He brought it up to the staff. He did a lot of the work himself in the initial prompt, and they went, fuck it, you lead the team.
He really pushed for it.
Yeah, they're like, fuck it, you lead the team then. And the one thing he really, really likes, he started Hudson on Bomberman. That's interesting. I need to play that. But one of the interesting things is when he first introduced himself to the FF staff, he said it was very, very difficult for him to do that because they didn't know who he was. And he was just the upstart little bastard. He thought he knew the way of things. He was definitely well learned at that point.
Yeah. But
he was definitely, to them, he was still like the new guy. And he said if not for Soken, helping him along, because Soken, whenever he gave the speech, Soken was the one who stood up, was like, fucking yeah, let's go, let's do this. And that's what led it all. So what a fucking time. What a time.
That's going to be fun getting into those videos on some of the people behind it.
Absolutely.
Oh man. Okay, time for you and me to take off, and I'm going to go to Tesco and get a delicious meal of something to do with eggs and soup.
Yep.
And I'm going to go and eat some nuts. And I'm going to think about all the other tasty things that actually my cravings are now really decreasing for. Turns out if you limit yourself to like under 100 carbs a day, a whole bunch of stuff just falls into place. It's kind of wacky.
Yeah.
Kind of wacky.
Indeed.
So yes, that's the plan. Right. Farewell, everyone. If you enjoyed the stream, I think it was a pretty fun one indeed.
Yeah.
And yeah, man. Endwalker. That's what's going to be going on this weekend. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for hanging out. I'm
a sleepy boy.
It's been damn near 4 hours. We did a long one today.
Yeah.
Thanks,
sort of
Sylvanus.
Back to the old days.
Yeah, not quite 7 or 8 hours, but we'll do.
Yeah, fuck me. Let's do a second day of work on top of the first day of work.
Yep.
That will be sustainable, the two men said.
Yeah, I'm fucking Endwalker. I need hit sage. I need a hit sage. Yeah, I need a level sage. 1080. So, yeah, goodbye, everyone.
All right. See you later. Yeah.